Hafa and welcome to the Guam Congress Building. The Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture is now called to order. Today is Wednesday, September 13th, 2023. The time is 2:15 p.m. In compliance with the Open Government Law, notices for this public hearing were published in the Guam Daily Post and posted to the Government of Guam Public Notice portal on Wednesday, September 6th and Monday, September 11th, 2023. Notices were also sent by email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets, and the hearing is being live streamed on the Guam Legislature's YouTube channel with closed captions. Individuals testifying, please wait until you're recognized by the chairperson. Also, please introduce yourself for the record each time you're going to speak, just for our record-keeping purposes while we're making a transcript. There are 3 items on our agenda today. Bill number 78-37 COR, introduced by Senator William A. Parkinson, is an act to add a new Chapter 98 of Title 10 Guam Code Annotated relative to emergency contraception for survivors of rape. Bill number 106-37 LS, introduced by Senator Tom Fisher and Vice Speaker Tina Rose Muña Barnes, is an act to provide a legislative submission for consideration by Guam voters at the next general election, and to provide Guam voters the power to decide on reproductive rights. The third agenda item is Bill number 111-37 LS, introduced by Senator William A. Parkinson. It is an act to add a new Chapter 91B to Division 4, Title 10, Guam Code Annotated, relative to expanding abortion services in Guam, and to cite this act as the Health Protection Act of 2023. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues who are here today with me, including Senator Tom Fisher, Senator Terlaje, and Senator Roy Kinata, Sidusmasi senators. So our first agenda item will be Bill number 78-37 COR, introduced by Senator William A. Parkinson. Senator Parkinson is unable to be with us today, and I'm going to recognize Senator Roy Kinata in his place. Senator Kinata.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bill number 78-37 COR, the measure states that the emergency health care facility shall provide emergency care to a sexual assault victim, mandating that such facilities shall provide medically and factually accurate, objective, oral and written information about emergency contraception and sexually transmitted diseases. Additionally, such facilities must inform each victim of their option for emergency contraception. According to the FBI Uniform Crime Report, Guam has the second highest number of rapes per capita in the United States of America. In 2020, 75% of sexual assault victims were minors. Survivors of rape and sexual assault are some of the most vulnerable in our community. Guam has some of the highest sexual assault rates in the country, and an emergency contraception taken within 120 hours can prevent pregnancy. Emergency contraception prevents pregnancy. It does not include an abortion. Emergency contraceptive EC pills, sometimes referred to as a morning after pill, can prevent pregnancy after unprotected intercourse, including rape. EC significantly reduces the risk of pregnancy if taken within 72 hours of unprotected intercourse or contraceptive failure. It is most effective if taken within 12 hours of intercourse, but can be effective up to 120 hours. 22 states and the District of Columbia have laws or regulations that require hospital emergency rooms to provide information about the access to EC to sexual assault survivors. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists and the American Public Health Association recommended that ECs be offered to all rape patients at risk of pregnancy. Likewise, in their guidelines for treating women who have been raped, the American Medical Association advises physicians to ensure that the rape patients are informed about and, if appropriate, provided the EC. Time is absolutely critical for a woman who wishes to prevent pregnancy after rape. The effectiveness of an EC diminishes with delay. Experts stress that EC is the most effective, and it is better sooner than late, and the sooner it is taken, with effectiveness decreasing every 12 hours. Therefore, it is extremely important for emergency care facilities to offer EC to the women who have been raped during an initial exam. I strongly support the availability of emergency contraception in emergency rooms. Access to emergency contraception can be crucial for women and girls who have experienced sexual assault, as it may help prevent unintended pregnancies and reduce the need for an abortion. They work mainly by preventing or delaying ovulation and cannot terminate the established pregnancy. They should be taken as quickly as possible because they are more effective the sooner they are taken, and taken after unprotected sex, but can be taken up to 120 hours later. They have no complicated or long-term side effects. Emergency contraceptive pills are high doses of oral contraceptives, birth controls that millions of women take every day. ECs do not disrupt the established pregnancy. EC prevents pregnancy. It does not induce an abortion. Emergency rooms are often the first point of contact for individuals in the need of urgent medical care after sexual assault, and they should be equipped with the necessary resources to provide comprehensive care for patients. It is important to provide patients with the accurate and unbiased information about emergency contraception so they can make informed decisions about their health care. We have to ensure that the patients have access to all available medical options. Again, this is from Senator Will Parkinson's office, and I am just acting on his behalf. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Canassa. And I just want to clarify, he's not here because he's ill,
Yes.
and otherwise he would be here, I'm sure. The committee will now receive testimony on this bill, but before that, I would just like to read what we have received from BBMR, that is our Bureau of Budget and Management Resources, on the bill, their fiscal impact. They stated that absent information from the Department of Public Health and Social Services regarding the subject matter, the Bureau is unable to determine a financial impact at this time. The legal review from our own legislative legal bureau is still pending, and it says that the bill intends to add a new code section allowing medical professionals to prescribe emergency contraception to victims of rape and sexual assault. The bill also requires healthcare facilities to have written policies and procedures ensuring all personnel who provide care or information to a sexual assault victim are trained to provide emergency contraception information to victims of sexual assault. All right, so we'll receive testimony on the bill. We have signed up to testify on this bill Mr. Gregorio Calvo, Jane Flores, Monica Flores. You can have a seat up here on this table if you'd like to provide oral testimony. Is there anyone else who would like to provide oral testimony? I'd like to recognize the presence, yeah. All right, so on bill number 78, we'll begin with Mr. Gregorio Calvo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Originally, I was going to testify in general for the old three bills, but okay. Obviously, there's no objection for this one because it just provides the how our medical profession can respond to an emergency. But my understanding was that there was always provision for this in the hospitals for anyone that was going through that. So at this point, Madam Speaker, I have no objection.
So just Masi, Mr. Calvo.
Yes.
Jane Flores.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hafaday, Speaker Terlaje, and committee members. I am Jane Flores. I'm the Director of the Bureau of Women's Affairs and the Administrator of the Governor's Community Outreach Federal Programs Office, which handles our U.S. Department of Justice Office of Violence Against Women grants. Sijus Masi for your invitation to testify on the proposed Bill 7837, an act to add a new chapter of the Guam Code Annotated relative to emergency contraception for survivors of rape. I would first like to commend Senator Parkinson for authoring Bill 7837, it is important that emergency contraception remain legally available free of charge on our island for survivors of sexual assault, regardless of the political atmosphere. It is unfortunate that during this time in our country's history, we must be concerned about legally keeping emergency contraception available for survivors of sexual assault or for any person who wishes not to become pregnant. Emergency contraception, known by brand names such as Plan B, One Step, Take Action, My Way, After Pill, etc., or by its generic drug name of levonorgestrel, and I apologize if I pronounced that incorrectly, is not an abortion drug. I believe it is important to state this clearly because there is substantial misinformation concerning the nature of this medication and what it actually does. According to the Food and Drug Administration and other health and science sources, levonorgestrel is an emergency contraceptive taken by mouth after unprotected sex or contraceptive failure. According to the FDA, levonorgestrel is a synthetic hormone that has been used in birth control pills for over 35 years. It is available as a non-prescription, over-the-counter drug here on Guam and elsewhere. According to the FDA website, levonorgestrel usually stops or delays the release of an egg from the ovary. The single tablet simply contains a higher dose of levonorgestrel than birth control pills and works in a similar way to prevent pregnancy. When you prevent conception by delaying the release of the egg from the ovary, abortion is not possible. The abortion drugs mifepristone and misoprostol work to terminate an actual pregnancy, so there is a major difference. This bill deals with keeping emergency contraception available for rape survivors free of charge, an absolute necessity here on our island. In 2022, the Guam Police Department recorded 240 cases of criminal sexual conduct. Minors, those under the age of 18, constituted 82.5% of the victims in those cases. Let me repeat that percentage. 82.5% of the criminal sexual conduct cases recorded last year by the Guam Police Department involved victims who were minors. As a member of the Sexual Assault Response Team Steering Committee, I'm aware that Healing Hearts Crisis Center has a memorandum of understanding with Guam Memorial Hospital that a victim survivor of sexual assault who shows up at the GMH emergency room is taken to Healing Hearts, where the survivor can undergo, if desired, a rape kit exam that is conducted by a trained healthcare professional. The survivor is also offered, again, if the survivor so desires, the emergency contraception pill. This pill is issued free of charge. Healing Hearts offers emergency contraception to every sexual assault survivor when applicable, regardless of whether they go to the crisis center immediately or whether they first go to GMH or to another emergency care facility. I'm not aware as to whether Healing Hearts has MOUs with other emergency care facilities on island, but I do know that they have an MOU with GPD as well as GMH. With regard to Section 3 of the bill, Policies, Procedures Concerning Personnel Training, Healing Hearts, as part of its informed consent policy, provides survivors with verbal and written information about emergency contraception, how it works, possible side effects, etc. This information has been prepared by healthcare and counseling professionals who are trained to assist survivors of sexual assault during this very difficult post-assault time, including speaking with them about emergency contraception. We recommend deferring to these trained professionals with regard to the preparation and dissemination of this information. With regard to Section 4, written information relative to sexual assault victims regarding emergency contraception, again, I strongly advocate that we defer to the trained sexual assault nurse and forensic examiners and to healthcare professionals at Healing Hearts with regard to the preparation and dissemination of written documents or written information about emergency contraception. Healing Hearts may be able to share their printed information with other emergency health centers on island. One item that the committee may consider addressing is making emergency contraception more affordable and accessible for the general public. The Bureau of Women's Affairs surveyed more than half a dozen pharmacies in January of this year, asking about the price for Plan B, or the levonorgestrel pill. The price of this emergency contraceptive pill ranged from $35 to $60 per pill, depending on the generic or brand name version. Another productive effort would be to collaborate on ways to make birth control and information about various methods of birth control more widely and readily accessible to the general public. In summary, BWA supports Bill 7837, the passage of which will serve to keep emergency contraception legally available for survivors of sexual assault. Sijus Masi for the opportunity to testify in support of this important legislation.
Sijus Masi, Mrs. Flores. Monica Flores.
Hafa Speaker and Senators, thank you for being here today. My name is Monica Flores, and I'm here to testify as an individual and in favor of Bill 78-37. I think that this bill, Bill 78-37, is an important measure it's just an important public health measure overall. It's very critical to prevent unwanted pregnancies that result from sexual violence, and in doing so, we are, showing the survivors of rape and sexual assaults that we are here to support them, to care for them, and to make sure that they are not going to be forced to carry a pregnancy, an unwanted pregnancy, against their will. That's a result of the horrible crime that they've had to endure. The numbers are shocking, how high sexual assault is here, and especially among our young folks. And this is a measure for them. It's so critical that we think about them. My only suggestion to improve the bill is that the language be expanded to talk about who qualifies, and I'm talking about the definition of sexual victim, letter E. I would like to suggest that it be expanded to say, instead of means female who alleges or is alleged to have suffered a personal physical or psychological injury as a result of a sexual offense, to be expanded to a person who might not even identify as female. We have to consider our trans and non-binary relatives in this as well, who can also be victimized and who also need the same level of protection. I'm grateful for the introduction of this bill. I support it, and I encourage all the senators to support this important measure. Timeliness is critical. When an individual is assaulted, they have a small window to prevent, further harm from happening to them. They're already dealing with the trauma, the physical, emotional, and psychological trauma of the assault, and an unwanted pregnancy would just exacerbate that harm for them. And so this is a measure for those victims. So thank you so much. Sijus Masi.
Thank you very much, Ms. Flores. I'm sorry, I also have another list here. Agnes White, if you'd also like to testify. Is there anyone else who I've missed who wanted to testify on Bill number 78? All right, if not, then Ms. White, you may proceed.
Thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of this bill. I am opposed to Bill 78-37. Perhaps I can relate, may I preface this by saying that I have been a registered nurse on this island for almost 40 years. And with that said, I'd like to relate a story that is true and has happened in our experience. The Archdiocese of Ganya, the Pro-Life Committee, sponsors special retreats called Rachel's Vineyard. It's for women or men and anybody who have been affected by abortion. We had a participant who had been raped as a young woman in the States, and she had been in torment for over 30 years because after her rape, she was given this pill. Had she conceived, she would have wanted to keep this child, but she wasn't given that choice. In the emergency room, boom, take this pill. Your bill states that giving this pill is standard procedure. And you talk about giving the woman information. when you've been raped, you can't even process what happened. This woman was totally shocked. She didn't even know what was happening. So she's been tormented for over 30 years because of this incident. You talk about timeliness in delivering this drug because it's more effective. Time for her has worked against her. It did not give her any support, any relief, any comfort. And knowing that she may have conceived really hurt her tremendously. And the possibility of not bearing this child had affected her deeply into her adulthood. So I encourage you, in the way this bill is written, being standard procedure, it is not pro-women, and it doesn't take the woman's situation into concern. Yes, it's a terrible situation to be in a condition where you are in a post-rape situation, and I don't wish that for anybody. However, resulting to an emergency pill because she may have conceived is not the solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, so on the verbal testimony for Bill 78, I believe that's all who have signed up, but we did receive written testimony as well from Patricia Babauta. Patricia Babauta in opposition, Maria Mofnas in opposition, Mary Pablo in opposition. We also received a testimony from the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center, specifically regarding the Healing Hearts Crisis Center, which is operated by the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center. And in their testimony, I encourage all my colleagues to read it. It talks about the number of referrals received in the past 5 years and the services provided, including emergency contraceptive and STI testing with treatment. They also say that currently emergency contraception can be obtained over the counter at any pharmacy on Guam without a physician prescription. Victims, survivors are also referred to the Department of Public Health and Social Services for STD, or sexually transmitted disease, or STI consultations and treatment, or they can choose to see their primary physician for treatment. The Healing Hearts Center is funded through local funds, the Edward Byrne Grant, and Guam Sexual Assault and Abuse Resource Center Association. The Healing Hearts Crisis Center will continue to offer and provide emergency contraceptives to victims of sexual assault for all acute cases. Looking at our numbers, the Healing Hearts Crisis Center would need to have at least 10 to 20 emergency contraceptives in stock to be able to provide to victims who have been sexually assaulted or abused. These medications are not only for victims in acute cases, but can be offered to victims who call in to request for treatment only. The Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center is in favor of this bill and is willing to continue to provide emergency contraception under the Edward Burns Grant. Undangkong Nasiduas Maasi from Therese Areola, who's the director of the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center. All right, I'd like to open it now to my colleagues for questions on the bill or comments to the panel. We'll begin with Senator Roy Canata on behalf of the sponsor. On your own behalf, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I certainly rise in support. It's an educational bill, and I think women need to have the right to choose, and I support the measure, and I look forward to it having its day in the legislative floor. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I congratulate Senator Parkinson on the introduction of this bill, and I hope when the time comes he will allow me to join him on it. The last lady who testified, she voiced concern some years ago that a rape victim, as I understood it, had presented themselves and was given a medication which prevented contraception, and that she regretted that because she didn't feel like she had received the choice. And I would just say, it may be of some comfort, ma'am, that this bill actually requires the victim to be fully informed about the drug that is proposed to be administered and has every right to refuse it. So I understand the concern. It's not mandatory at all, and I hope that that would address your concerns. And I was shocked to learn through Senator Kanata that Guam is number 2 in the nation. Is that just for rapes or sexual assault in general?
Based on testimony from Senator Parkinson, correct.
Okay, we're number 2. And then, as I heard from the Bureau of Women's Affairs, 82.5% of the victims of sexual assault are minors.
That's correct, Senator. Based on our data that we received from the Guam Police Department's Domestic Assault Response Team, they tabulate all of the domestic assault and domestic violence and sexual assault crimes per year and give us the data.
Do you know if of the 82 point, I think it's probably fair to assume that of the 82.5%, some are intrafamilial acts of violence? In other words, it's a family member on family member.
Yes, that I believe so. They don't break down the data that deeply for us, but they could tell you that. GPD could tell you that. But we know for a fact, just from the victim services that we fund, that some of this, a good percentage of it, is intrafamilial.
Okay. Ma'am, may I assume that among the 82.5%, many, perhaps not all, but many are capable of becoming impregnated?
We don't know the numbers. GPD doesn't break it down. They just give us 0 to 17. Okay. But they would have to break that number down.
Based on your experience, do you think it would be a fair assumption that some of the victims are capable of being impregnated?
Absolutely.
Ma'am, based on your experience, and I think everyone's, can a pregnancy change or upend a youngster's life?
I'm not a pediatrician, but pediatricians have sat at this table before and testified that when an 11 or 12-year-old child becomes pregnant, their body, just because a child starts to menstruate at 11 or 12, does not mean that their body is ready for pregnancy. That would be like assuming that someone that had been just handed their learner's permit could drive in the Indy 500.
Mm-hmm. Understood. Well, I guess my comment would be that it should be common knowledge beyond argument that a pregnancy significantly impacts the life of the mother throughout life, and and as you observe, particularly among children, that may be, well, extraordinarily dangerous. I think this bill is generous. I think this bill reflects Christian values, and I very much commend Senator Parkinson for bringing it forward. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Terlaje.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, or Madam Chair. You know, I was hoping we would have somebody from other clinics to be here to talk to us about what is already offered as far as this type of pill that we're talking about. A lot of it's called, people call it like the morning after pill. And here it's EC, I think it's discussed about that emergency contraception, EC. The cost, you said, Mrs. Flores, was $35 to $60 per pill.
That's over the counter. That was, we surveyed people because we had an instance where we had a woman in January call us and say she could not avail of the pill because she couldn't find it anywhere because it was January, it was after New Year's, perhaps.
Well,
But it was, we did a survey of several pharmacies, I think it's half a dozen, to find out how much it cost and whether they had it. They all carried it or some form.
so they did have something here.
Yes.
Now, according to the Affordable Care Act, it seems that any kind of FDA-approved contraceptive drugs and devices as prescribed in the emergency contraception is carried under the Affordable Care Act. And it also says that Medicaid also can carry this type of pill as well. Then you have the Guam Behavioral Wellness, who gives examples that the speaker talked about earlier, the 5 examples of, in 2019, there were 100 referrals to the Guam Behavioral, the Healing Hearts Crisis Center, the HHCC. In 2020, it was only 55. In 2021, it was 68. Then it went up again in 2020-22 to 87 referrals. And then in 2023, which we haven't finished yet, it's up to 60 referrals. But it says here that they receive and they're funded through the Ed Byrne Grant and Sexual Assault and Abuse Resources Center. Now, if this bill passes, it'll mandate that government agencies, government hospital, the clinics are mandated to carry this and provide it for free. Well, we saw what happened with the feminine hygiene products that we put into law mandating the schools to have it, which now does not avail them of federal funding. And this is an issue because someone's going to have to pay for this. The good thing is that, people who have Medicaid, it's covered. The Affordable Care Act, it's covered. They go to the Healing Hearts Crisis Center, it's covered for free. But if we mandate it, they may not be able to afford it anymore because we're mandating it. Sometimes when you supplant, certain laws, it just doesn't avail us of federal funding. And that's one of my concerns. I was hoping that either public health would be here or even Guam Behavioral Wellness to answer some of my questions with regards to this, because the last thing I want to do is hinder us from the ability of getting federal funds. So I would like to,
Senator, I believe that the reason for the legislation is just to make sure that we still have this drug legally available. It would not, because many states mandate that the drug be available, and it is not just available to anyone. This mandates only that it is available to victims of rape.
Well, it would be free for them.
It is free for them.
So you're mandating that not only the clinics have to carry this, but they also have to give it for free. And like I said earlier, like Medicaid is covered. It covers prescription drugs, and it does cover contraceptions like these. And then, of course, the Healing Hearts, which they receive their money through federal grants. I just don't want to see them get in a situation where they're not able to continue to provide or get the money from a federal grant, because now it's mandated by law.
The issue with the period products, Senator, was that the Guam legislature funded that. There's no funding in this bill. It just mandates that it be available.
No, let me correct you. When we passed that bill, there was no funding for that bill as well for the feminine hygiene products in the FY 35 or 36 Guam legislature. There was none, because we were told that it was going to be provided through federal funding. Actually, it did in the first year, the 100,000. There was no funding in the first bill. Then now, when we are doing this in the budget bill, and let me remind you that there was a request now for the general fund to cover something that was told to us would be federally funded. And then we got notice from DOE who told us that this would hurt our possibilities of getting federally funded because we mandated it. All I'm saying is that we have to make sure we don't hinder any opportunity for any federal funding or provide any service to our women here on Guam. So, or men, I don't want to discriminate, but like I said, Madam Speaker, I was hoping that Guam Behavioral Wellness would be here. I'm sorry, did someone say something? Oh,
No,
okay.
No, I just think that Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness and Healing Hearts will be able to address this.
Well, I will. I definitely will ask the chair if they can look into this, and as well as public health, because there's clinics at public health and Guam Memorial Hospital as well. And if we have to make sure that this is not mandating, well, this bill actually would mandate private clinics as well. The Guam, GMRC, not GMRC, well, GMRC is a hospital as well, so we have to look into that. And then how much this is going to cost. Like you said, it's between $35 to $60 per pill. So, and you were claiming that there were, 233 is your numbers here, but some of that has to do with just not sexual, but it's just violence itself. So we don't really know those numbers as well. So other than that, Madam Chair, I really don't have any other questions, just to make sure that, oh, there is one more I do have. My concern about, can we force nonprofit organizations, or should they begin to, force nonprofit organizations? In this bill, it requires that these nonprofit organizations shall, if I'm not mistaken, I think the word shall. It's a difference between shall and may in a law, a big difference, that we are requiring them to be a part of a task group that gets together to discuss this. So my concern is also pertaining to that as well, because I don't think we have that authority to do it for nonprofits. But other than that, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. And I've noted your questions and concerns, and I will for sure follow up on those before we report the bill out. I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of Senator Sabina Perez, and thank you for being here, Senator. Senator Perez, if you have any questions or comments.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So yeah, one of the points that were raised was consent. And so I want to, considering the testimony that was provided, that 82.5% of victims, sexual assault victims, are minors. What is required to get consent for medical care for minors? Do they have to seek their guardians to get consent for this type of treatment?
Senator, I would defer to Healing Hearts for that question, or to a medical facility.
Yeah, so that's a question, I guess, for to get answers to, because
I would think that you would have to have parental consent to get, but I would think that the parent would be there. But again, you would have to ask the medical facilities. I'm not qualified to answer that question.
Yeah, and I think considering especially some of the perpetrators may be those people that are provided to give consent. So that, I wonder what the situation is as far as consent is concerned.
That is a valid concern.
Yeah. I just, I think that's one of the key issues, the questions that I have with this bill is consent. What are the questions around consent? And yeah, I think that, this is a measure, medical measure that is necessary for, to ensure that women have the right to their reproductive rights. I think that's really important. Considering that, maybe I should also expand it to other non-binary folk too, right? So, I look to also hear for more testimony. All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. Yeah, I was noting that in the Healing Hearts testimony, so they make it clear that they do their work in conjunction with emergency departments of the hospitals on the island. And the bill as well would apply, they define the emergency healthcare facility to mean a general hospital or satellite emergency department licensed under Guam law. So it's emergency facilities, not necessarily all clinics. It looks like what this bill is intending to address. And then I was noting in the bill that it says they shall provide this emergency contraception to the sexual assault victim upon her request. So that request is instrumental, and it doesn't require them to even offer it to her, but it requires them to inform her about the medication and the availability of it, and leave it at that. And then I read the behavioral health and wellness testimony again and noted that their procedure seems to be consistent with that, because they say in 2019 they received 100 referrals. 4 victims were provided with emergency contraceptive and testing, STI testing. In 2020, 55 referrals, only 1 victim was provided with the emergency contraception. In 2021, 68 referrals, no contraceptives were provided, and then they put parentheses, victims declined due to their religious beliefs, close parentheses. In 2022, 87 referrals, 1 victim was provided with emergency contraceptives and STI testing. In 2023, 60 referrals as of September 11, and so far only 3 victims inquired about emergency contraceptives and STI testing with treatment. So it seems clear to me that no one's being forced to take these, and that they're really respecting the patient's request or non-request. All right. But I do take note of all the questions and concerns that were raised, including the consent on the minor, and I'll add that as well to the list of questions that must be addressed prior to completing the committee report on this bill. Ms. Flores?
Yes, if I could just add a point to my testimony. I just feel, it goes without saying that a rape is a crisis. It's a crisis situation, and it needs an immediate response. A victim has been dehumanized. They've been dehumanized. Their bodies, their spirits have been attacked, but then they continue to be dehumanized, by the justice system, by society. It's a end to, this bill to offer this help immediately for these victims is a way to support victims. It's a way to break a cycle of violence that continues even after the assault. It can be dehumanizing for a victim to be expected to check if their insurance or their Medicare is going to cover their access to this medication. And so if you do the math at 233, and that's not all the victims who may need it, by $60, that's only $13,980 anyway. Like, as a member of this community, I think we can also ask to please find the $14,000 for a resource like this that can change someone's lives. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I that's separate from this bill. I'm just saying it in response because it's necessary. It's a necessary public health measure to have it available to people as an option. And I just need to make that, I just feel the need to make that point. A lot of us know victims. A lot of us love victims of sexual assault. A lot of us know and love people who've needed access to a safe termination of an unwanted pregnancy, and now that's very limited. And so if we can do whatever we can to make sure that victims and people in need of this necessary healthcare have it, that's really ultimately my ask of this legislature.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for that additional testimony. Senator Canetta, would you like to close on the bill on behalf of Senator Parkinson? Before that, Ms. Flores, you have something to add?
I would just like to add one thing, and it goes to Senator Titegui's comment about federal funding and deferring to Ms. Flores. We should not put local funding to this if it's already funded by federal funding, because that is supplanting, and we don't want to do that. But having said that, there is a section, I believe Section 4 is the one that lists all of the entities that should get together and come up with some language. And one of them is the Coalition Against Sexual Assault and Family Violence, and they are federally funded. So I would ask that they be taken out of the legislation, because we don't want to in any way jeopardize their federal funding by putting them into legislation. And also that this kind of language with regard to informing a victim about this medical procedure should really be done, again, by the medical professionals. And Healing Hearts has that information. They come up with it. The people that handle sexual assault examinations and sexual assault victims undergo specific rigorous training. And I would have to say that we should defer to them with regard to any kind of information that is given to a victim.
Can you clarify to who we should defer to, you're suggesting?
Healing Hearts professionals or trained sexual assault nurse examiners. We call them SANEs, S-A-N-E, which is a sexual assault nurse examiner, or SAFE, sexual assault forensic examiner, which is a physician or a physician assistant, but those are the professionals. They are trained in how to conduct a rape exam, how to handle the victims with victim-centered procedures, and they would be best able to, if there is a need for this information. However, it sounds like Healing Hearts already has developed this legislation, this information, so we really don't need to reinvent the wheel here.
All right, thank you as well for that additional testimony. And thank you all for your testimony. And I'd like to offer to Senator Canetta to close on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The author didn't provide me any statement, but I'm sure he just would like to thank you guys for coming out here today, and also to the Guam Behavioral Health for their testimony. Certainly we need those kinds of statistics to ensure that our legislation is vetted and it has some kind of educational sense on behind it. So with that being said, I just wanted to thank the panel again and thank you guys for coming out today.
Thank you, Senator. Again, thank you. That will conclude our hearing on Bill number 78-37 COR. We will move on to our next agenda items. So our second and third agenda items are Bill number 106-37 LS and Bill number, sorry, hold on. And Bill number 111-37 LS. I'm going to allow the sponsors to introduce their own bills. But I just wanted to explain, allow them to introduce their bills. What I'm intending to do is we're going to hear testimony on both bills at the same time. Our Legislative Council has summarized the bills for me and confirmed that both bills are identical, with the exception that Bill number 111-37 would put the question in the form of a referendum before the people of Guam to decide whether or not to adopt this law. I'm sorry, Bill number 106 would put the question in the form of a referendum before the people of Guam to decide whether or not to adopt this law, which we're going to discuss today. And Bill number 111 would be enacted by the legislature and the governor and not put the question before the people of Guam in a referendum. All right? And so I'd also like to, well, I'll begin with, so Bill number 106 is sponsored by Senator Tom Fisher and Vice Speaker Tina Muña Barner. Senator Fisher, you may introduce the bill.
Thank you very much, Chair. I assume that many people in the room are familiar with both 106 and 111. Bill 106, of which I am the author, together with Tina Rose Muña Barnes, attempts to put a question. The point of the bill is to put a question to the people of Guam rather than the legislature. You may think that, well, let me explain the reason that I came up with this mechanism for legislative submission. The people of Guam, after at least 50 years, would decide the question essentially up or down. On Guam, will abortion be legal? Or will it be illegal? Because of a decision that came out June 22nd of 2022, it is entirely possible for Guam, to outlaw abortions altogether. It is entirely possible for Guam or any other territory or any other state of the Union to outlaw abortions altogether, and they could criminalize it. There is no constitutional prohibition against criminalizing either the provision of abortion or obtaining an abortion. This has upended constitutional history that is at least half a century old. It is my belief, and it may seem somewhat cynical, that the legislature, when presented with the results of a submission, a referendum, in which I would expect 60 to 70% of the people on island, maybe even higher if we follow national trends, would support the right to have an abortion. A legislature faced with this extraordinary endorsement by the people of Guam of this fundamental constitutional right would be extraordinarily reluctant to overturn that right and go in the face of the people and say, we heard what you said, but we are going to go against it. We are going to defy your expressed wish. Bill 111 brings the bill directly to the legislative floor. I congratulate again Senator Parkinson for bringing it forward to do that. I propose Bill 106 because it provides a firmer foundation for a fundamental constitutional right to privacy, and that is the right to abortion. Keep in mind that if the legislature simply passes a law approving abortion, the 72nd Guam legislature, the 53rd Guam legislature can come in and upend that because, again, there has been, while everyone in this room, I suspect, grew up believing that there was a penumbral right to privacy in the Constitution's 14th Amendment, which guaranteed a woman's right to privacy, which guaranteed a woman's right to govern and make choices over her own body. That seemed to be firmly implanted in the Constitution. On June 22nd, 2022, that was ripped away. So that particular architecture no longer exists. We grew up with Roe v. Wade and thought that the trimester system was the way to go. We came across Pennsylvania versus Casey, and we learned that the standard was now undue burden, but the court never once said that the constitutional right of privacy upon which the abortion decisions have been made did not exist until June 22nd. Now, and I've said this many times, and I would say that the Supreme Court in the Dobbs decision, the dissent, Stephen Breyer, brought out very clearly, if Roe v. Wade fails, if Roe v. Wade falls because there is not a constitutional privacy protection, the court's work, you should not be satisfied that the court's work on these issues is complete. Griswold v. Connecticut, we learned that we are allowed to use contraceptives in Griswold. A man and a woman under Griswold may go to the local pharmacy and procure condoms, the morning after pill, anything, because the Constitution allows them to do that because there's a privacy interest. That goes to married couples, but then not too long after that, there was a case called Eisenstadt, and the Supreme Court determined that unmarried couples have a similar privacy interest in using contraceptive. My point is that Griswold decision is in danger. It stands on precisely the same foundation as Roe and Casey. In the mid to late 90s, a case was decided, Lawrence v. Texas. In that case, the Supreme Court said there was a privacy interest in enjoying intimate sexual relations, even within the same sex. Following that, in Obergefell, the Supreme Court recognized that there is a constitutional privacy interest in allowing same-sex unions. Obergefell, Eisenstadt, Griswold, Loving v. Virginia, all of them stand on precisely the same foundation. That foundation being a privacy interest in the 14th Amendment, and the Supreme Court has removed that privacy interest in the Constitution. I don't believe it's an exaggeration at all to say that it is an emergency. It's an emergency for American constitutional tradition. It's also an emergency for each of us in this room and our privacy rights. That is what is at stake here. I would submit to you that neither Bill 106 or 111 is a perfect bill. They are both imperfect. They're imperfect, but it is the best way we can see forward to protecting a privacy interest, to protecting a woman's right to govern her own body. The state has absolutely no interest, except in extreme conditions, in telling a person what they may do with their body. That is the most personal and the most private decision that they have. So I wanted to state that so you would know why the bill has come forward, both of them, and why there seems to be a difference between whether or not it's going to go to the floor of the legislature or it is going to go to the people of Guam. I recognize, and the Supreme Court recognized in the Casey decision, and the Supreme Court recognized in the Roe decision, that this is a decision that is extraordinarily controversial and has proved to be very divisive for the American polity. The conversation is robust on both sides, and it is offered sincerely on both sides. But this is a tool by which we will resolve it on Guam, one way or another. And although I recognize that many of the people who are here today do not support either 111 or 106, and I respect that, I just want you to know the reasons that they are here for your consideration. And thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. So Bill number 111-37LS is sponsored again by Senator William Parkinson, and I'm going to recognize Senator Roy Kanata on behalf of Senator Parkinson to introduce his bill.
Are we on 106 or 111?
111.
Okay. Sorry. What are we talking about? Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Bill number 111-37LS. We've seen over years that across the states and territories, women having to make tough decisions about their own bodies. Now, this is not about health. It is not just about the rights. It's about the kind of society we want to be. Do we value personal freedom? Do we trust our women to make choices about their own lives. Across the globe, where abortion is legal or restricted, women often turn to unsafe methods. According to the World Health Organization, approximately 25 million unsafe abortions occur each year globally. These unsafe procedures can lead to the severe complications and even death by ensuring safe and legal abortion access. We can prevent the needless loss of life and long-term health complications. A study from the National Bureau of Economic Research reveals that women who have access to reproductive health care, including abortion, are more likely to achieve the higher levels of education and have greater workforce participation. This not only improves the lives of the individual woman, but also strengthens the economic fabric of our community. Research from the Guttmacher Institute suggests that when women have control over their reproductive choices, they're in a better position to plan and provide for their families. This autonomy impacts not just their immediate families, but ripples through the entire society, leading to more stable communities. The Centers of Disease Control and Prevention states that almost half of all the pregnancies in the U.S. are unintended. Providing comprehensive reproductive rights, including abortion, helps address the challenges posed by many unintended pregnancies. According to the Journal of Adolescent Health, areas with restricted abortion access often see higher rates of teen pregnancy. Data from the Child Welfare League of America suggests that when women don't have the choice to terminate an unwanted pregnancy, there is a surge of children entering in the foster care system. Guam, with our unique challenges, could see a strain on our current already limited resources. It's easy to speak from a distance to judge a place of privilege, but the true measure of our empathy is understanding the shoes we've never walked in. A woman in Guam, perhaps facing an unplanned pregnancy, should not have fewer rights or choices just because of her geography. I understand that this is a deeply personal issue for many, and respect for all perspectives is essential. But when we legislate, we must ensure that laws reflect a balance and, most importantly, uphold the individual's right to choose. We've seen the dangers when women don't have access to safe, legal abortion services. It pushes them to dangerous alternatives, compromising their own health, and in some cases, even their lives. It's not just about medical procedure, it's about the dignity, it's about the autonomy, it's about the woman's right to determine her own identity and destiny. Again, this is not my personal testimony. This is remarks from Senator Will Parkinson. Unfortunately, he's not able to join us today. He's under the weather. Thank you again, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Kanata. Okay, so again, I just want to repeat so there's no confusion. We're having a hearing right now. We're going to hear testimony on both bills from anyone who wants to present testimony. So on both Bill 106 or 111, and the difference between the two, and so both bills, and I wanted to read another excerpt from our Legislative Council. I asked her for a summary on what the bills would do. So what 111 would do if passed, and what Bill 106 would do if passed by the body. It would be put on an election, and if passed in the election, both bills would do the same, okay? If it's passed in an election. So both bills would, if passed either on the floor or in that election, they would legalize abortions on Guam, and this is our Legislative Council summary. Legalize abortions on Guam with little to no preconditions or restrictions to providing or obtaining such services. The bill removes restrictions and requirements that are normally found in other statutes allowing or preventing abortions. For example, the bill removes restrictions such as when an abortion may be performed, the requirement that the provider have certain equipment available or conduct certain tests. The bill also does not require the patient to disclose their reasons for the abortion. The bill allows the Attorney General's office to bring civil suits against government officials attempting to restrict the abortion, and authorizes a private cause of actions against government officials attempting to prevent abortions, and to recover attorney's fees and costs if the plaintiff prevails. That was from our Legislative Council. That's a summary of what the bill would do. I also, in reading it, I think it's important that everyone, well, how I see the bills to act is that, and this is my summary, a healthcare provider would have a statutory right under this act to provide abortion services and may provide abortion services, and the patient has a corresponding right to receive such services without a prohibition at any point prior to fetal viability. They have the same right, the providers and the patients, after fetal viability, when in the good faith medical judgment of the treating healthcare provider, continuation of the pregnancy would pose a risk to the pregnant patient's life or health, or would pose a risk to the patient's health. And viability is defined in these both bills to mean the point in a pregnancy at which, in the good faith medical judgment of the treating healthcare provider, based on the particular facts of the case before the healthcare provider, there is a reasonable likelihood of sustained fetal survival outside the uterus with or without artificial support. A healthcare provider in these bills is defined as an entity or individual, including any physician, certified nurse midwife, nurse practitioner, and physician assistant that A, is engaged or seeks to engage in the delivery of healthcare services, including abortion services, and B, if required by law or regulation to be licensed or certified to engage in the delivery of such services, is so licensed or certified, or would be so licensed or certified, but for their past, present, or potential provision of abortion services prohibited by Section 4. All right, so I'm hoping that we're all clear on what we're going to be testifying today. So if you could please, when testifying, of course, identify yourselves. Let us know whether you support the provisions of these bills, Bill 106 or 111, and in particular, whether you support that this be enacted by the legislature, or whether it be put before the people of Guam as a decision through a legislative submission, a referendum before the people of Guam. All right, so for the record, we requested feedback on these bills from the Office of the Attorney General, the Department of Public Health and Social Services, the Guam Medical Association, the Guam Medical Society, the Judiciary of Guam, the Guam Board of Medical Examiners, Familauan Rights, the Bureau of Women's Affairs, and we have received testimony on the bill, written testimony. The written testimony that we had received prior to the hearing were all in opposition to both bills. One was in support of Bill 111, but I think we're going to hear oral testimony. That was from the Bureau of Women's Affairs. Okay, so we'll begin with the testimony. Those who have signed up for Bill number 106 include Sharon O'Malley. So you can take a seat and we'll fit, I see Mr. Calvo's here, so thank you, Mr. Calvo. Gregorio Calvo, Sharon O'Malley, Maria Pangilinan. And if I call your name and you don't want to provide oral testimony, that's okay. I'd like to just recognize the presence of the Executive Director of the Guam Election Commission. She's here for questions. If we have any questions, she didn't have testimony. Yeah, she's not signed up. So some of you are not signed up, so I'm not going to read your name. Some of you have signed up that you're present, but not to provide testimony, so I will not read your names unless. Okay, so Jane Flores, Bureau of Women's Affairs, Agnes White, Muña Flores, Tatiana Regis, Don Edquilane. All right, those who are signed up for Bill 106. I also have a list for Bill 107, and so I will be calling you shortly, okay, after this panel. Just so you know, those include Sharon O'Malley, Agnes White, Jane Flores, Muña Flores, and Donna Quilleen. So if there's anyone who wanted to testify in either of these bills who I have not called, please sign in with the desk over there, okay? All right, so we'll begin with the first person, was Sharon O'Malley.
Can I clarify, since we're doing both bills, because I'm opposing both bills, I presented 2 different testimonies. But there's a part where I mirror my testimony on Bill 106-37, so I'm trying to figure out how would I present my testimony.
You can do
about-
one at a time. We'll be patient.
Thank
You can do
you.
106, and then you can do 111
Yeah,
right after.
I just wasn't sure. I thought I was advised that I had to present each
No, no,
bill
no.
as is. No problem. Thank you so much. So my name is Sharon E. O'Mallon. I'm from the village of Agana Heights, and I write this testimony opposing Bill number 106-37. So dear Senator Terlaje and all Guam senators, I cannot say it enough, but I wholeheartedly oppose this Bill number 106-37 because of many reasons. The language is very misleading in where it leads you to believe that you are just voting yes or no, and that's it. Many people will not know that by voting yes, they are voting to change the entire abortion law. The referendum question does not say what will happen if you vote no. If you vote no, then abortion will remain legal, and the abortion law will stay status quo. The pro-abortion argument always alludes to the idea that abortion is not legal on Guam when it is. Please let me remind you that abortion is legal on Guam now, currently. The problem is that the doctors on Guam do not want their names associated with abortion. The Ninth Circuit Court opinion issued August 1st, 2023 in the Rado and Kaneshiro versus Gulf Guam. It was noted in a footnote at oral, an open parenthesis, or open quote, at oral argument, plaintiffs stated for the first time that the physicians who provide pre- and post-abortion care would not be willing to provide in-person consultations because they would have to formally associate themselves with abortion providers, and that they refused to do so. So this bill was needed to replace current law, and I'm sorry, close the parenthesis there over the quotes. So this bill was needed to replace current law so that doctors can now hide who they are and what they are doing. And since this bill seeks to remove restrictions and requirements, no one has to report anything and no doctor's names need to be known. Would this be considered like back alley abortions that were the justification for legalizing abortions to stop back alley abortions from happening? So let's take it back to the dark. The language on the bill under legislature findings and intent state that abortion services are essential health care, and access to those services is central to people's ability to participate equally in the economic and social life of the territory. That is an insult to all the women who have chosen to have children and continue to work and take care of both their jobs, their children, and households. You diminish the strength and intelligence and hard work of working mothers and stay-at-home mothers. This bill also writes that there are over 500 restrictions signaling out healthcare providers who offer abortion services. Please, senators, here on Guam, there are not over 500 restrictions. If there are 500 restrictions, then that is an accumulated total of over 52 states and territories, and Guam perhaps has just about 3 restrictions on abortion. The pro-abortion group feels that restrictions such as sitting down with a woman considering an abortion and talking to her about the availability of financial assistance, adoption options, or legal support for her to seek support from the father of the baby, or ultrasound to show her the child inside and at what stage of pregnancy she is in, or discuss with her the types of abortion available for her, or the discussion of possible health issues which may occur after the abortion and how and when to seek medical assistance, and all other discussions which are most beneficial to the well-being of the woman at current stage of pregnancy or further in her pregnancy and after delivery if she so chooses to keep the baby, or should she choose to abort. There is no judging or pushing for either way in that section of the law. This bill mentions often the term medically comparable procedures and questions why there are more restrictions and attention to abortion procedures than other feminine procedures. Let me quote a line stated in the opinion issued by the Ninth Circuit Court in Rado and Keneshiro versus Government of Guam, opinion number 21-16559, issued on August 1st, 2023, which reinstated the requirement of in-person consultations. You will find on page 19, halfway down on paragraph 3, the judges state, quote, because abortion presents different considerations than other medical procedures. Unlike other medical procedures, abortion implicates fetal life in addition to the patient's health. Abortion is a unique act because it terminates life or potential life. Abortion is inherently different from other medical procedures because no other procedure involves the purposeful termination of a potential life, end quote. That's from the Ninth Circuit judges. Paragraph 4 at the end of the first paragraph states, quote, unlike other medical procedures, abortion implicates fetal life in addition to the patient's health, and the in-person requirement bears a reasonable relationship to the legitimate governmental interest of safeguarding fetal life, end quote. So the discussion regarding abortion being safe and that it is supported by whole groups of people and professionals forgets, as the judges ruled, abortion is about 2 lives, not just one. So let's remember that, all of you now and in upcoming discussions. It's not 1 life, but 2. On page 4 of this bill, 106-37, it discusses the purpose of the bill. This bill wishes to allow health care providers to provide services without limitations or requirements that single out abortion services for restrictions. Are we then going back to the barbaric act of partial birth abortions, abortion up to birth, no reporting requirements, no parental consent required? Is this where we are headed? As I stated above, the judges recognize the uniqueness of abortion as it involves not just the mother's life, but also fetal life. This is why there needs to be certain requirements and limitations on abortion. Abortion is the purposeful termination of a potential life. In the middle of all this, let's remember again, abortion is currently legal in Guam. I keep reminding everybody. Under definitions, since my testimony is long, I will skip right to the definitions of health care provider. Means any entity or individual, and then there's a parenthesis right there after the word individual. And it says, including any physician, certified nurse, midwife, nurse practitioner, and physician assistants, and then it closes the parenthesis. The language in this section is opening up the term healthcare provider to be anyone. The term individual was then followed by an open parenthesis, which made the term individual, anyone, to not have to be a licensed professional. Very misleading. Anyone can perform an abortion. That's how much these senators care about a woman considering an abortion. The term healthcare provider then is inserted in every section to make sure it is understood along the whole way that the healthcare provider, anyone, can be allowed to perform an abortion. Under the definition of viability, this same healthcare provider, which is anyone, will determine in their good faith and judgment the viability of fetal survival outside the uterus. Moving on to permitted services. Again, this healthcare provider, which is anyone, can provide abortion services without any of the following limitations or requirements. Does not have to provide any form of medical test at all. Does not have to talk to the woman regarding the facts of her pregnancy. Can in fact dispense drugs or medicine to perform the abortion. Can in fact perform telemedicine abortion. Does not have to have a medical clinic or any hospital or credentials or hospital privileges where abortion services are provided. In other words, the abortion can be done anywhere. So while I am getting my hair done at a beauty shop, an abortion health care provider can be providing an abortion in the next room of the beauty shop. Or let's take it to another level. The abortion can be performed at a school where a teacher has impregnated his middle school or high school student. He can be considered by the definition of this bill a health care provider. And since the place of the abortion can be anywhere, he can do the abortion on his student in the school science lab. Why not? No one needs to know. No license, no reporting, no parental consent, no facility restrictions. The following sections of this bill describe laws that are already in place which make abortion legal in Guam, but it removes the restrictions on who can perform the abortion and make the decisions as well as the type of abortion procedure restriction. A partial birth abortion ban has been a part of Guam law, and these removal of restrictions will bring back such procedures as well as abortion up to birth as determined by the health care provider, anyone. And since there are no restrictions or requirements, no one needs to know. The next sections are scary, as I see the removal of freedom of speech being infringed upon here. And it's under other limitations or requirements. This section speaks of bringing lawsuits against anyone who may be considered as having prohibited an abortion or having caused a delay in a woman considering an abortion. So should a person decide to stand outside an abortion clinic or in front of a legislative building or outside in the general public and display pro-life signs or pray to end abortion signs, these people may be considered as possible reasons for a person to change their mind about having their abortion or may possibly delay a person from having an abortion. So the person who either changes their mind about their abortion or delays in getting their abortion can then blame the pro-life person as the cause and then can take that person to civil court and sue them for the delay. This is incredible. I didn't have my abortion because I saw that person standing outside with a rosary, holding up a sign that says abortion kills children. It's that person's fault that I have this baby. I will sue that person for my problems because I had the baby. I mean, really. The enforcement section feels like an actual threat. This section is intended to bully and intimidate anyone who is pro-life, giving all kinds of power to anyone who supports abortion. I personally felt threatened just reading it. So please, Senators, do not pass this entire Bill 106-37 as it is a horrible bill. Thank you for taking the time. So then, my 111, there's a section that mirrors 106-37, so I can read the beginning of my testimony that doesn't mirror. Is that okay with you?
Thank you. Please proceed.
So this is I write this testimony opposing Bill number 111-37. Dear Senator Terlaje and all Guam senators, I wish to submit my testimony opposing Bill number 111-37. As I feel this bill is extremely wrong. At first, I thought that I would just mirror my testimony to be exactly like my opposition to Bill number 106-37, but I feel I can add other things in this testimony against Bill number 111-37, as well as similar testimony in the other bill. First, I wish to bring to your attention that abortion is currently legal on Guam. Do not let the pro-abortion people lead you to believe that abortion is not legal on Guam. What is happening with all these new bills being proposed is that they are trying to bring a free-for-all, no boundaries, no limitations, and no need to know new abortion law here on our island. Pro-abortion people try and make it seem that pro-life people and pro-life laws are judgmental and invasive and are useless hindrances to the women. Nowhere on the current Guam law is it required that the name of the person having an abortion is listed. The name of the person having the abortion is completely confidential. The current reporting requirements for an abortion to be reported by the doctor performing the abortion are basically statistical information necessary. 1, the name of the facility, estimated gestational age, date of the abortion, zip code or other residential ID of the patient, age of the patient, ethnic origin of patient, patient's marital status, number of previous pregnancies, patient's educational status, number of children living, number of previous abortions, date of last abortion, date of last live birth, method of contraception used at the time of conception, date of last menstrual period. Medical condition of patient at the time of the abortion, and this section here, these questions below, are the doctor filled out. The top ones are all basically statistical gathering information. And then now the doctor has to complete medical condition of patient at the time of the abortion, RH type of patient, which is a protection for the woman, and should she have an abortion or should she even carry the baby to term. There's a certain medical condition that comes with being an RH type of patient. It's for the safety of the patient, for the doctor to know this. Type of abortion procedure used, complications, if any, during and post-abortion, type of procedure used after abortion, type of family planning recommended, type of additional counseling given, if any, signature of the attending physician. If complications arose, they have to fill out the following: the name of facility abortion was done, address of facility, date of the abortion, nature of the abortion, complications diagnosed and or treatment, physician provided post-abortive care. They need to know those things. This is for the safety of the woman and for doctors to know, and the Guam, or even anybody here on Guam Public Health, to know if there's a recurring name showing up on a complication. This is all for the safety of the woman. Nowhere does it say, I'm stopping your abortion. All these questions here are just to make sure the woman is okay. And that's what the last section's about, just to make sure this woman is okay. Tell me how invasive is all of this. I believe any doctor would need to know the above from a woman if the doctor was to perform an abortion. Most of the information asked is statistical, and the rest is out of general concern and for the well-being of the woman. That a lot of the questions are for the doctor's completion. Nothing in this questionnaire is trying to stop the woman from having her abortion. I think I was asked more questions when I tried to get a new phone. Yeah. The pro-abortion people try and mislead you to think that the in-person consent law is unnecessary. Well, when a pregnant woman is contemplating an abortion, a life-changing moment, I think allowing her to have 24 hours to think about it is very important. During that in-person consultation, the doctor can determine if this abortion is forced on the woman, or if there is a rape or molestation issue going on. The discussion also includes a talk about the availability of help for the mother, financial assistance, legal assistance, how to get a financial assistance from the father of the child, what to do if something goes wrong during and after the abortion, when to seek help if something goes wrong. How wrong are those questions? But the pro-abortion people will lead you to believe that the woman's health is the only important thing. The bill mentions often the term medically comparable procedures, and the questions why there are more restrictions and attention to abortion procedures than other feminine procedures. Let me quote a line stated in opinion issued by the Ninth Circuit Court in Rado and Kaneshiro versus Government of Guam, issued August 1st, 2023, which reinstated the requirement of in-person consultation. You will find on page 19, and I think I read this, halfway on paragraph 3, the judges state, because abortion presents different considerations than other medical procedures. Unlike other medical procedures, abortion implicates fetal life in addition to the patient's health. Abortion is a unique act because it terminates life or potential life. Abortion is inherently different from other medical procedures because no other procedure involves the purposeful termination of a potential life. Okay, page 4 of the opinion, and I'm trying to see where, no, I didn't mirror it yet. Page 4 of the opinion, at the end of the first paragraph states, Unlike other medical procedures, abortion implicates fetal life in addition to the patient's health, and the in-person requirement bears a reasonable relationship to the legitimate governmental interest of safeguarding fetal life. So the discussion regarding abortion being safe and that it is supported by whole groups of people and professionals forgets, as the judges ruled, abortion is about 2 lives, not just 1. Okay, and I said, let us remember that. In the opening remarks of Bill number 111-37, it states that since 1973, the Supreme Court repeatedly has recognized the constitutional right to terminate a pregnancy. What the discussion fails to mention is that in June of 2022, the Supreme Court ruled that abortion is not a constitutional right. This bill also writes that there are over 500 restrictions signaling out healthcare providers who offer abortion services. Please, senators, here on Guam, there are not 500 restrictions. One of the restrictions is the banning of partial birth abortions, and I brought this up. You remember an abortion where the mother is induced into labor and the mother starts the delivery, but the doctor stops the baby from coming all the way out. And then the doctor holds the head of the baby in the birth canal and then slips a sharp instrument into the neck and up into the skull, and then scrambles the brains of the baby. The baby then falls limp and dead outside of the birth canal. And so the doctor delivers a dead baby with a crushed skull. These laws are bringing these things back. My goodness, how disgusting of us pro-life people to want to stop this kind of barbaric activity by such loving and caring senators and doctors. And then, of course, the parental consent restriction. Now, why would a parent have to know that their minor child is having an abortion? Such controlling parents. This just opens up for an increased not reporting activity of rape, incest, molestation, and outright child trafficking. For adult women, it is rape and sexual abuse. Very important issues that need to be reported. So the rest of my testimony in this bill mirrors my testimony in 106-37, and I don't want to bore everybody here, so I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for your consideration. So yes, noted that the rest of the testimony provides the details as earlier testified. Thank you very much. Mr. Calvo? Okay, Agnes White.
Good afternoon, Hafaday, Speaker Terlaje, and members of the legislature. Thank you for this opportunity to testify on Bill 106-37 and also 111-37. I am a registered voter of the village of Tamuning, and I submit this written testimony against Bills 106-37 and 111-37, which allow for unrestricted abortion at any stage of fetal development, even beyond fetal viability. The following are some reasons why I oppose this bill and why I urge you all to vote no. While I remain steadfastly against abortion, which terminates the life of an innocent child, I recognize that abortion is still legal on Guam, and laws currently in place were meant to protect the woman. The mantra we hear from those who support abortion is that we want to ensure safety for the woman, safety for her choice. Bill 106-37, 111-37 undermines that safety in the following ways. Number one, it makes provisions that the healthcare provider is not required to have an in-person consultation with the woman receiving abortion, whether surgically or chemically. An invasive procedure, such an abortion, must warrant a consult with the healthcare provider so that informed consent may be obtained. As Sharon mentioned, through an in-person interview, one can determine if there are extenuating circumstances as to why this woman is in this situation and placed in this situation where she may want to obtain an abortion. So an in-person consultation is important and very vital. And also for informed consent to happen, it should be done in person. So with this law, that requirement is completely thrown out. As a registered nurse for almost 4 decades, informed consent and in-person consultation are basic elements of care that must never be compromised. And the danger happens that by removing this requirement, other conditions, situations such as teleabortions can be so readily available from off-island providers. The second reason why safety is undermined for a woman seeking abortion in this bill does not require the health care provider to ensure that the state of the facility or room or wherever the abortion will take place meets basic rules of infection control or cleanliness or hygienic practices. In every healthcare facility, infection control is a serious matter. There are staff members assigned to infection control departments. Infections are followed closely. And here we are, we're throwing out this requirement for a facility that's doing such a procedure such as an abortion, not to report any of these things or not to be responsible for any standards of care related to infection control. That's preposterous. Bill 106-37 and 111-37 also allows for abortion at any stage of fetal development. Under the section on permitted services, number 8 states that abortions can be performed at any point or points in time prior to fetal viability. And number 9 states that an abortion can be done even after fetal viability when in good faith medical judgment of the treating health care provider, continuation of the pregnancy would pose a risk to pregnant patient's life or health. Wouldn't delivering a premature baby who is viable be the most sensible and humane course of action? Anthony Levatino, MD, a former abortion provider who was also my first OB when I lived in upstate New York, managed hundreds of high-risk pregnancies where a mother's life was at risk. He stated in a testimony before the U.S. House of Representatives, in most such cases, any attempt to perform an abortion to save the mother's life would entail undue and dangerous delay in providing appropriate, truly life-saving care. During my time at Albany Medical Center, I managed hundreds of such cases by, and he put terminating in quotes, by terminating pregnancies to save the mother's life. Further on in his testimony, this terminating to save mothers' lives was called a C-section. He delivered those babies through C-section. And then he further states, in those hundreds of cases, the number of unborn children that I had to deliberately kill was 0. So, in order to save the mother's life in a fetus that's completely viable, outside the womb, with or without life support, the option would be to deliver the child via C-section, not to terminate the life of the child, which is more dangerous, and the mother's safety is completely compromised. So I urge you to vote against Bill 106-37, 111-37. It is written in language that is deliberately vague and misleading. And most of all, this bill exploits women and kills their children. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. White. Mr. Gregorio Calvo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Please forgive me, I've been coughing a lot, and I hope to be able to finish the testimony as best I can. Buenas and Hafaday, Chairperson Therese, Terlaje, and the members of this honorable committee, Health, Land, Justice, and Culture. I'm here to testify against legislative measures 106-37, 111-37. And in my observation, it seems that there's a need to, and I'll put that out in the following testimony, to remind us that for all intents and purposes, very real and spiritual demonic activities, darkness continues to permeate our island. I'm also here to make a personal stand on these measures so that in the days ahead, it's for myself that I need to make a public statement on the sanctity of life so that I know personally for myself that I've made up my mind and they'll never have a need to reconsider, reponder, deliberate, or determine what's my position. In other words, this has determined my values, my principles, and that I've found the truth, and the truth shall make you free. I'm the eldest of 13 children. I'm so glad that my mom and dad are pro-life. The basic assumption of all the above that I've just stated is based biblically in the book of Proverbs. The fear of God is the foundation of life, that one may turn away from the snares of death. What I'm describing here as death are the results of whatever happens with these legislative bills as they proceed forward. Nationally, the essence of the sanctity of life in the womb has been held hostage since 1973, for more than 49 years. The infamous Supreme Court decision of Roe v. Wade. Imagine that 9 Supreme Court justices determined over and above its legal authority and jurisdiction to locate a precedence for abortion in the United States Constitution when there was none. Yet tragically, 62 million babies have been aborted in the United States of America. Worldwide, it's estimated there are over 1.6 billion abortions and thus human lives aborted. To highlight these issues across the nation, let me just offer a couple of excerpts from livenews.com. It just came out Sunday, September 10th, and it's just a real quick summary. Radical abortion activists are doing everything they can to legalize abortion up to birth. Never before contemplated, but just recently in the last couple of years. Everywhere they can and kill as many babies as possible. Because still up to now, no one's ever determined the difference between a fetus and a baby. Where's the demarcation line? Traditionally, Joe Biden is forcing Americans to fund abortion tourism for the military. He's trying to make every employer in the country pay for abortions, and is using an international program meant to stop AIDS to promote abortions worldwide. In pro-life states like Ohio, Missouri, Florida, extreme abortion supporters are trying to overturn pro-life laws by passing amendments for abortions up to birth. And then in pro-abortion states like California, Michigan, and Washington, they're trying to push teenage girls into secret abortions without their parents even knowing. Where's the limits? In every state in America, they're pushing dangerous abortion drugs that kill babies and injure women in an attempt to get around pro-life laws and kill as many babies as they can. Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Right here in our island of Guam, since 1973 to the present, there are over 33,000 babies that have never seen the light of day to which they were created for. And 2 of those, both one in my family and one in my wife's family, we were able to talk to them so that they were able to give the babies in their womb a chance to live. Those 2 nephews of ours are the highlights of our families. 2 years ago, a pro-life committee was established within the Republican Party of Guam. It met, we've been meeting, discussing. We had joint efforts with Attorney Pete Scroll to draft and offer a legislative measure that was similar to the Texas pro-life measure, which became law in that state, one of the most effective laws in the United States. We followed it through our own legislative process. We watched painfully as would-be supporters from both political parties vacillated and eventually took watered-down positions. We all know that what eventually happened. A weakened bill got passed. The bill got passed, was transmitted to the executive branch, was promptly vetoed. There was not enough votes by God-fearing senators to override the governor's veto. And so now, here we are again. Where is the former pro-life legislative measure that we thought was going to be reintroduced so they can repeat the legislative process over? And so now, where do we go from here? Do we kick the can down the road? Here's my personal conclusion as I close. It seems that our island is now at a Red Sea moment. I'm sure you all know where that was derived from. In the ancient biblical days, in the book of Exodus, when the Israelites were trying to get out of 430 years of slavery from Egypt, Moses was sent to deliver them. After many, many curses, a lot of things happened. The Pharaoh finally let them go to a place that they were trapped between mountains and water. Then the soldiers came. Pharaoh decided to mobilize again and go after them to bring them back into slavery, which is what we're doing with these bills. Moses declared, "Fear not, stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will work for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you, and you only have to be silent. You shall hold your peace." And to pro-life leaders in this legislature, stand firm and see what God will do through you. I now respectfully and humbly exhort you in this legislative body to take your rightful places as our island's policy makers. I've worked in the legislature for over 30 years in times past. I've never seen 4 years of a legislative inactivity in the pertaining to policy. The legislative branch is where policy is made. That means deliberation is made in the legislative branch, and then with the cooperation of the governor, determines whether that then is enacted into law. But the decision to make policy is in this branch. And we cannot abdicate it. There's some things that we can bring out to the electorate, but there's many things that we don't. Because this is why you senators were elected. You senators were elected to make a decision. And finally, it is necessary to remind ourselves that we are truly living in perilous times. So I leave this closing exhortation for us. The God of peace, which passes all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. Finally, my brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are honest, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things, my babies are lovely, whatever things are good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. As you deliberate, think on the things that are virtuous about our island of Guam, about our families. And as you do these things, be true to your heart and your conscience. But just in case you don't make up your mind to do what's right, I leave you one more principle for you to contemplate. The Lord said in Ezekiel chapter 12:25, "For I am the Lord, I will speak. I've spoken the sanctity of life," paraphrase, "and the word that I speak to you shall come to pass. It shall no more be prolonged. For in your days, O rebellious house, would I say the word, and I will perform it, says the Lord." May God have mercy on us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Calvo. Mr. Erkeling? Dr. Weir, I'm sorry. Yeah, Dr. Weir, would you like to have a seat? Is there anyone? You can stay. We'd like to ask questions if you're willing. Yeah. So please stay. Yeah, I just wanted to allow Dr. Weir to sit, and the rest can stay. Mr.
I'm sorry.
Right, thank you.
We can leave or
Mr.
stay?
Edgerling, pardon?
We can.
You're welcome to leave, but I'm going to open this after all the testimony to the senators if they have any questions for you. All right, so Mr. Equilane.
Thank you. I want to start by introducing myself. My name is Don Edquilani, and thank you. I am here to support the Catholic Pro-Life Committee and our Christian leaders and Catholic church leaders, because they don't usually involve themselves in politics, but they do influence us in our lives, and so I want to give them due respect. So I am against Bill 106 and 111, 106 3-37 and 111-37 in their current form. And I want to start out by, giving excerpts from the Declaration of Independence. So one of the excerpts is, "The law of nature and nature's God entitle a decent respect to the opinions of mankind." So this is good that we share different opinions and we understand each other. It's a conversation. "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that are among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." And we'd like to include, as much as possible, unborn babies, who I believe, although I am not a biologist or a doctor, I believe that these unborn babies are human beings, to the best of our knowledge. So I would like to include that as them as having the same rights as everyone that are identified in the Declaration of Independence. And I would like to acknowledge our Creator, because our rights are not from man, but are from our Creator. And I believe that our Constitution clarifies what those rights are from our Creator. I would like to request from our senators who identify themselves as pro-life, who are against abortion, if they would consider reintroducing a version of either the Heartbeat Act of 2022 or a bill which is a version of Public Law 20-134. on any referendum or ballot for a vote. I believe that's all I have to say. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Kilani. Tatiana Regis.
Hi, my name is Tatiana Regis. I'd like to thank Madam Chair and the senators for the opportunity to speak. First, I am here to testify in support of Bill number 111-37 and in opposition of Bill number 106-37. I only found out about this hearing last night, and I found it urgent for me to come and voice my opinions, considering how polarizing this issue is on Guam and how passionately I feel about it. So I will be brief. The power to decide on reproductive rights is an issue about the fundamental human right to bodily autonomy and equitable health care. Putting these rights in the hands of voters is an irresponsible act. Access to these human rights should not be dependent on the votes of the majority, votes that realistically are susceptible to be guided by a limited understanding of an extremely nuanced issue and personal values that should only dictate the life choices of the individual that holds them. These are rights that are entitled to all people and rights that our government should protect. It is the legislature's responsibility as government officials and public servants to inform themselves of all the aspects, facts, research, and nuances regarding abortion and reproductive rights. It is their responsibility to carefully consider their personal, cultural, and religious beliefs and to uphold the crucial principle of government to separate church and state in order to make a choice that best protects the humanity and liberties of an issue up for debate. The safety of our people is not a secondary concern. Gov Guam needs to make definitive actions to firmly secure reproductive rights, protect access to equitable health care, and bodily autonomy for all Guahan citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Regis. Ms. Flores?
Thank you, Speaker. Again, I'm Jane Flores, Director of the Bureau of Women's Affairs and Administrator of the Governor's Community Outreach Federal Programs Office. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you and the members of the committee today. I would first like to commend the bill's authors, Senator Tom Fisher and co-sponsor Vice Speaker Tina Muña Barnes for Bill 10637 and Senator Will Parkinson for Bill 11137. The purpose of both bills is the same, to allow healthcare providers to provide essential abortion reproductive health care services without unnecessary government interference in the physician-patient relationship. Bill 106 asks the people of Guam to decide whether this government interference should continue. Bill 111 would simply eliminate it legislatively. It is very gratifying to have lawmakers who recognize that, as quoted in the findings and intent of both bills, many of our citizens believe that abortion services are essential health care and access to those services is central to the people's ability to participate equally in the economic and social life of the territory. It is gratifying because reproductive choice is clearly the will of a majority of the people of Guam. Our people have twice now signaled their support for reproductive choice through voter mandates. First, with the election of our first female and pro-choice Magahaga, Lourdes Aflagui Leon Guerrero, in 2018, and then again with the sound re-election of Governor Leon Guerrero and Lieutenant Governor Joshua Tenorio in 2022. It is and has been the position of this administration that reproductive health care is a personal decision that should be made by an individual in consultation with their physician and anyone else that person chooses to engage in that decision, and that abortion should be included as part of the full range of reproductive health care options available for the people of our island. Another sign of the people's support for individual reproductive rights and access to abortion as one of those rights was the overwhelming testimony against Bill 29136, the Guam Heartbeat Act, and its subsequent defeat by failed override in the 36th Guam legislature. Bill 29136 would have placed severe restrictions on abortion. Last year in May, the Committee on Health received 284 written testimonies in favor of that legislation and an overwhelming 881 pieces of testimony against it, a 3-to-1 margin against the passage of such restrictive legislation. Bill 106 proposes another opportunity for a mandate, this time giving the people the power to decide by referendum in the upcoming 2024 election whether to prevent or eliminate 11 restrictions on abortion. Bill 111 would, again, prevent or eliminate these same restrictions simply by its passage. Some of the restrictions proposed for elimination in both bills are currently in place via the Women's Reproductive Health Information Act of 2012, such as the requirement for in-person counseling at least 24 hours before an abortion is performed, and the subjection of the patient to unnecessary medical and social information regarding abortion, both verbally and in print, prior to the procedure. Importantly, provisions of both Bills 106 and 111 would also prevent restrictions on a healthcare provider's ability to provide abortion services via telemedicine, and prevent restrictions regarding a healthcare provider's ability to prescribe or dispense, presumably, abortion drugs based on current evidence-based regimens. Again, Bill 106 by referendum vote and Bill 111 by its passage. With regard to Bill 106, we support the underlying intent of Bill 106 to allow healthcare providers to provide abortion services without unnecessary limitations or requirements that single out this procedure with the intent of restricting access to it. Bill 106, as written, asks people to vote yes or no on the question, shall the Reproductive Health Protection Act of 2023, as recited herein and below, be enacted into Guam law? This act is 10 pages long and mentions, and as mentioned, outlines the elimination of 11 components that put unnecessary medical, technological, or psychological restrictions on a healthcare provider's ability to perform, or in the case of medication abortion, prescribe the necessary medicines for this procedure. This legislation may require funding for a voter education campaign, which, if so, and I will defer to the Guam Election Commission on this, should be included in the bill. Also, please consider that it may be too lengthy a proposal to put forth in a simple yes or no referendum. The passage of Bill 11137 would accomplish the elimination of current restrictions on abortion and the prevention of future restrictions on this healthcare procedure in a more straightforward manner. Given the inconsistency between both Bills 106 and 111, another possibility to consider is the repeal of the Women's Reproductive Health Information Act of 2012. Senators, if you are looking for a mandate from the people with regard to the issue of whether abortion should remain a viable, accessible, and necessary reproductive health care option for Guam, perhaps look no further than the 2018 and 22 elections and to the testimony submitted last year regarding the failed Guam Heartbeat Act. Bill 11137 would respect that mandate on which the people have already spoken. Si Jus Masi for the opportunity to provide testimony on these two very important pieces of legislation.
Si Jus Masi. Mrs. Flores. Monica Flores.
Happy day and good afternoon, Senators. My name is Monica Flores, and I'm here to testify as an individual. I also want to extend my appreciation to the authors of both bills. I do support the intent of both of the bills, although I support one more over the other. I appreciate the efforts of the senators to protect our privacy rights, to protect body sovereignty, to secure our rights to have access to safe, legal abortions. And I have to say that, you know, the term pro-abortion is very problematic. It should be expanded to be pro-gender equality, anti-poverty, you know, pro-body sovereignty. Abortion is healthcare. Abortion is healthcare. Abortion is healthcare. And access to this healthcare actually saves lives. And not just the life of the pregnant person, but we have to consider the challenges of that an unwanted child experiences throughout their lifetime. I'm here really in support of Bill 111. I do appreciate the intent of Bill 106, but I do agree with the previous speakers that our ability to make personal medical decisions during pregnancy, including accessing abortion, should not depend on where we live or if we have enough money to travel thousands of miles for essential health care. The people of Guam are entitled to the protections of our fundamental rights without any further delay. And while we know the majority of voters in Guam would support these rights in a referendum, we should not have to wait for a referendum to protect our rights and make sure our rights are secured. We have our duly elected representatives who can and should act today to pass protections for this access now. And, you know, we want to work with you to continue to find the best paths moving forward. That's all I have to say about that. Thank you so much. You know, this is actually very brave work. It is really difficult to come out because this is a very polarizing issue. So thank you for coming out and just saying outwardly that you want to, you know, protect our privacy rights, protect our body sovereignty, and protect our access to safe and legal abortion. Sizos Masi.
Sizos Masi. We have Dr. Weir. Wait, I just want to make sure we have Viola Ekfaji. Yes, you can have a seat. And the rest of you, if you don't mind waiting just a little while longer, we'll have 2 more testimony. Did I miss anyone? If not, all right. So Dr. Weir, you may proceed.
Thank you, Senators. I appreciate that we have such a turnout. Usually when I come down here, there's 1 or 2 senators. I am a physician. I'm speaking for myself. As you can tell by looking at me, I'm an old physician. When I first began practicing, abortion was a contentious issue, similar to now, and I practiced in areas where abortion was not freely available. Unfortunately, during my training, I got to take care of people who sought their abortions elsewhere. And these were truly tragic events. Some people, you know, feel strongly enough about this that they're willing to do anything, and abortions outside the realm of medicine, I can say, are not terribly safe as a rule. So I came in late and I missed the first bill. I'd like to make one comment on that, if I might. The day after pill, which the first bill discussed, I would like to point out is an over-the-counter medication. This means that anyone can go to any pharmacy and buy it. They don't have to go to an emergency room. If the senators wish to make sure that it is available in the emergency room, I think that might be reasonable. If they want to make sure that people who go to emergency rooms with this concern are given their options, I think that might be concern. But beyond that, this bill, I think, is superfluous. I don't think we need to put it into the list of laws we have. The second bills that are discussed, I think, impinge on a number of issues. I think you've heard testimony since I've been here, and I'm sure you heard some before I came, pointing at the sanctity of life. And I would concur with most of what has been said there. However, just because you have a heartbeat doesn't mean that you're able to function in society. We have babies, not uncommonly, that are born without brains. These babies have no chance of survival, and to force mothers to carry these babies to term, I believe, is cruel and unusual. There are many other genetic defects that we can now determine prenatally. And some of these also are uniformly fatal. So that trying to write a law that says yes or no really doesn't make a lot of sense. Taking this decision out of the doctor-patient relationship and into your realm and into the legal realm is fraught with problems. And we have seen this repeatedly over the last year in those states that have extreme abortion laws. I think the thing that we really need to be thinking about is what happens to these babies that are born. We know that single mothers have difficulty in this life, and that as a result of that, their children have difficulties. I think what we need to be looking at is if we are going to mandate that babies are born no matter what, we also need to mandate that they are cared for. And by that, I mean until they are 18 or 20 or 24, they should have adequate health care insurance. I think mothers should also have income to support them. And I don't think that $1,500 a month to take care of a child is an unreasonable amount of money. This is a big expense, and it's one that I don't hear the people that are saying we need to have these babies born have really looked at or been willing to discuss. It needs to be discussed. I'd also like to point out some inconsistencies in the testimony you've heard. People are coming out saying we need to have face-to-face, person-to-person consultations. This is the year 2023. Telemedicine now it's new. A lot of people don't realize what it is, but it's an extremely powerful medical tool. And to say that this is not appropriate, I think is inappropriate. Here on Guam, mental health does telemedicine right now for its people here on Guam. We wear the masks, and COVID is still there, and if you read the papers, it may be coming back. Face-to-face may not be the best choice, and I believe telemedicine is an appropriate alternative, and I would urge you to consider that in your deliberations. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Weir. Can you just state your full name for the record, please?
William Walter Weir, MD.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ekfaji? Oh, please press the button there on that microphone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please state your name for the record and then proceed.
My name is Viola Akfaji, and I am in opposition to both bills. Just to reiterate this reproductive rights, I'm going to go to the very basic. We, all of us, we the reproduced are here today in the different stages of our life. We began in our mother's womb, and if we take a pause and remember, we were in our mother's womb and we don't know what we're going to come upon this world, and we're born, but we're given the right to live. So definitely we were given the right to live. We were reproduced, and thank our mothers for that. I passed out with you folks a public record, the abortion reports from Maria Kinata and Public Health. These reports, I think, were made available, I hope you have in front of you, starting in January of 22. I don't know why it ended here, but I know that Sharon here requested these, and so I was privy to share with you. We take a look at these babies that have been, they're called medication abortion. Dr. Rido, I gave you the picture of Dr. Rido. She's a beautiful woman. This is she. I looked her up. This is Dr. Rido. She's on the...
Ms. Claudia, on the bill, please, on the bill.
Okay, all right, on the bill, yes. This is very much the bill, because this is what we're talking about. Sharon said abortions are legal, very legal, up to, abortions are legal, medication abortion is legal. I gave you 2022, 2023. I'm going to go with 2023. The last reporting was up to, I think, July. So what we have in Guam, the real raw truth, is that on Guam right now, no teenagers, by the way, no teenagers here. Some are college graduates, some are married, some are not, some with children. And let me divert a little bit from that. In the newspaper today, we had a mother with her sign, mother by choice, and then she has 4 beautiful created children saying, my body, I don't want her body autonomy to. I mean, is that a kitchen table issue? We discuss with their children. Mommy's going to kill this baby because we can't afford her. We have, on the reports here, you can see that many of these mothers have children. God bless these children who realize that their sibling was killed and flushed down the toilet, because that is what medication abortion is. It's a 2-pill system. Pill 1, you take a pill, it kills the baby. Pill 2, several days later, it flushes the baby out, it expels the baby into the toilet. And when I looked up telemedicine abortion, yes, you get a beautiful person across the computer, and she goes, take the pill, it'll expel the baby, you can flush it on the toilet, sit there, you don't have to look at it. Or if you don't want, I guess you can go to a hospital. I don't know if Guam Memorial has taken women who probably are bleeding profusely because of these medication abortions. But the point is, on Guam today, we do have babies that have joined the sewage system. And if that doesn't bother us, that we have these children and these mothers here who, oh, by the way, I'm going to divert, I'm sorry. I'm going to go with the Rachel's Vineyard. We're going to have our 3rd Rachel's Vineyard. Men and women are hurting because of their abortion here in Guam. God bless Rachel's Vineyard. We've had beautiful souls come in, and they're hurt for life. They're hurt for life, and the healing process is profound, it's deep, and they finally come out to say, I can't carry this burden anymore, because they are hurting. But maybe pro-abortion people say, no, shout out your abortion. Oprah Winfrey said that. Shout out your abortion. Why would you want to shout out your abortion? I thought it was supposed to be a heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching decision. It is a very... The truth is, we are aborting our children, and the reports show that, and like I said, and this Dr. Rido, this doctor here, is the doctor who is I think she's dubbed Queen of Abortion Doctor. She's your, what do you call her? The doctor, the abortion doctor. She has infiltrated our island, and I guess she's saying yes to these drugs. I don't even know the process, but she's the doctor that is allowing for abortions to happen. And by the way, I'm sorry, Ms. Jane Flores, you held the heartbeat bill being squashed. And Senator Bisco Lee called it the Calacas bill. But I was watching TV, and Entresto is a medication for heart. And they warn, do not take Entresto if pregnant, because it may harm or kill the unborn baby. Yesterday I was watching Lovato. Lovato is, I think, for HIV patients, another medication. But do not take Lovato because you may harm the baby, the unborn baby. These are unborn babies from conception, and these babies in the report, have definitely just met their demise by being flushed down the toilet. That's Guam's reality, and let's make Guam be the beacon of hope. Let's be no abortion in Guam, and if you really need to kill your baby, then get a GoFundMe and go to Hawaii and get your baby killed, if that is that important to you. But let's have babies be born. Give them a chance to live. I'm child number 8 of 9 children. I'm sure my mother would put her hair, but we all have had rough times. We've all have had, challenging times, but we are living. And the many babies we have in Guam that are many delinquents, juvenile, I'm sure they're wanted, but life happens where challenges, it is not a, it is not a perfect life, but we have to give babies a chance to live and grow and enjoy life that we are enjoying. And I don't know when we're going to go, but we produced can say that, thank you, Mom. Thank you for having me talk about this without a prepared speech. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Ekfaji.
Welcome.
Ms. Ekfaji, could you please clarify
Yes.
the documents that you gave to me,
Yes.
to my staff?
Those
What
are
is the source of these documents?
Right there, Maria, she's public health statistics.
Okay, so one of these is,
Yes.
it says abortion report summary,
Yes.
January to July 2023.
Yes.
My question is about the second document.
which
It says
which one?
abortion
I'm sorry.
report summary 2022, and then it has a note on public health report, also 2 asterisks, others were from Maria Kanata. Who made this document?
These are...
Okay, so this is not a report from the Department of Public Health. It's a document made by Sharon O'Malley's raising her hand, Mr. Mallon.
I'm sorry. Public Health provides the report, and I just summarized the report.
Okay, so both of these are summaries you made?
Yeah, they come from Vital Health.
right.
I don't make up the
Okay.
numbers.
All right, thank you.
So because versus the report, like I think I read in one of my things, all the questions asked, ethnic, blah, blah, blah. Nothing is personal. I mean, nothing is revealing. And so it's just summarized in, each page is just summarized into our report versus the whole document.
All right, I'm going to refer senators to the actuarial reports, and I will make those available upon request. Those are available. Yes, thank you.
Are required.
Yes.
The public health has to provide the required document.
Correct, thank you. All right. Okay, so I'm going to open it to the panel now for questions for those who are here. Senator Fisher, you may begin.
Thank you very much. Ms. O'Malley, I was listening to your testimony, of course, and you were concerned about the definition of healthcare provider.
Yes, sir.
In both bills. I would refer you to, well, I'm going to go to 106 and refer you to page 4 and 5 that defines healthcare provider. I think you'll be comforted to learn that a healthcare provider is engaged or seeks to engage in the delivery of healthcare services, including abortion services, and if required by law or regulation to be licensed or certified to engage in the delivery of such services, is so licensed or certified. So, ma'am, you needn't be concerned that if this law were to come to pass, that we would be subjecting people to back alley abortions or unsanitary procedures or anything like that. What is a healthcare provider is clearly provided in both Senator Parkinson's law and mine, and I think that that should bring you some comfort since it is and, not or.
Oh my gosh, I don't know what happened there. That's not my fault. Okay, she said move it back.
All right. And then you correctly have observed that abortion is legal on Guam.
It is.
Yes, that's correct. And we were also, I think through Ms. Flores' testimony, we learned of the existence of Section 3218.1 of 10 GCA, the Women's Reproductive Health Information Act of 2012. While abortion is legal on Guam, this particular act, which I think in nature and practice, I think may best be described as odious. It says that at least 24 hours before the abortion, the physician who is to perform the abortion has given a copy of printed material that is mandated by law. And that printed material includes information about adoption services, support obligations of the father, but shockingly, the printed materials that we are required to give to ladies who have come to obtain a most personal and most private service, the printed materials that inform the pregnant women of the probable anatomical and physiological characteristics. I have no idea what the relevance of that is to the decision of whether or not to terminate a pregnancy. And in 2-week gestational increments from fertilization to full term, including color photographs of the developing child. I can't imagine what the purpose of that is other than to dissuade a person from exercising this most personal and most private right. And I think that, if you contemplate that, where we're going to actually be showing photographs in 2-week gestational periods of the developing fetus, I think that I think a rational person would agree that this law is in fact odious, and we hope to get done with it. You had also, ma'am, you were concerned about the definition of a medically comparable procedure. That too is defined in the bills, and I would just invite you to look at the definition of a medically comparable procedure, which is contained in both bills. A medically comparable procedure, ma'am, in spite of, I think that was a concurrence you read from the Ninth Circuit. The term medically comparable procedure means a medical procedures that are similar in terms of health and safety risks for to the patient, complexity, or the clinical setting that is indicated. A medically comparable procedure is not an identical procedure. So I think that if you were to contemplate those sections of the law, I think that your concerns would be allayed. And we had testimony from a Ms. White. I think she has left. And
Was I supposed to respond to any of your responses?
Oh, sure. Please do. Please
Yeah,
do.
let's go back to your first response.
Okay.
What was that?
Healthcare provider.
The healthcare provider, yes. The way it's written in this bill, it leaves it open to the interpretation of the healthcare provider. Not only in the writing of it, but the parenthesis after the individual, and then later on to describe should, past, present, blah, blah. There was this whole vagueness of it, which leaves open the interpretation of the healthcare provider.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, it can be easily
thank you very
taken
much,
out
ma'am,
of
but
term
thank you,
on the
ma'am.
healthcare provider.
Yes, ma'am, but it is neither vague. I'm sorry, is this microphone working? Hello? Yeah, okay. Yes, ma'am, I appreciate your statement, but it's comprehensive, unambiguous, and quite straightforward what the definition of a healthcare provider is. I would just ask you to have a look at it. I think that you will come to agree with me.
No, I didn't. In fact, I even researched it up to the federal courts and out in the states, and actually in sites where they are all saying that that section there opens the interpretation as to who can perform an abortion and removes the requirements of a professional trained doctor to leave it quite open. And so it's not clarified there in that healthcare provider. And the fact that the word healthcare provider was imposed in like almost every section of here, it leads me to believe that they're correct in their assumption that it's leaving the term healthcare provider open to anyone.
Okay, all right.
Anyone.
Thank you very much. Of course, you are entitled to your own opinions, but ma'am,
Yes.
you are not entitled to your own facts. And I would just ask you to read this. Your interpretation is entirely wrong.
Okay, and your next section that you were asking about?
Okay, yes, ma'am.
What was the next
The
question you
next
were
one
bringing
about,
up?
was my observations about the health care,
The
Women's
healthcare
Reproductive Health
facility?
Information Act.
Yes, I am very familiar with the Women's Reproduction Healthcare Act of 2012.
What do you think about that idea of providing photographs? Is there a point behind
Yes,
that?
yes, there is actually. I remember when those laws were being introduced. What it is abortion is very, it's not just an immediate act. It will affect the person for the rest of their lives, and it's known. I mean, a woman, young lady, woman, anyone who has an abortion doesn't just walk away and say it's done. It's a long-term effect.
Okay.
And so what it is just so that woman is completely, I give 24 hours, take a breath, know what you're doing, know what you're doing. But mostly, sometimes they say people are coming up, a lot of this has to do, that law right there has a lot to do with the woman's care. In studies, it's found that a woman needs to know that she's not alone when she's pregnant. If she financially cannot afford that child, there are ways that she can financially get financial help. The idea of adoption is presented in that 24 hours, in those documents that they present to the women, adoption. That lady who's pregnant and going to have a baby, if she's, and she doesn't abort it and has the option of giving away the baby, and that now it's even open adoptions are very common around here. Or in the old days, it was called paksa. You won't believe how many people in families right now are from another person in their family, or the grandma.
Ma'am,
or,
what do you think the importance or relevance of the photograph is
okay.
all throughout gestation?
Back to that. The pictures are just to let the woman know exactly where she's at, and then it comes to the point of what stage of her pregnancy she is, so that she can know at what point of this stage of her pregnancy abortion is available, which type of abortion is available for this term and this place where you're at. And for her to be fully aware of the gestational age of her child, so that she completely is aware of what she's doing, so that when she says goodbye and has this abortion, she knew what she was doing. She had the time to make the decision. She had the time to think about it. And should she decide to proceed with this abortion, she had everything in front of her to make this decision, and that she should walk away knowing that she did the best decision she made at this point.
Ma'am, as an alternate reason for the requirements that there be a photograph at 2-week gestational periods, is it also to dissuade an individual from executing a decision that she has arrived at through consultation with herself, and additionally to cause psychic pain to that person, to also dissuade them from doing so? Do you think that's an alternate explanation?
Oh, I would say, I would hope that she would choose not to have an abortion. But at no point at that does the doctor say you shouldn't have an abortion. That whole consultation there is purely informational, purely full knowledge, so that woman fully knows what she's doing. And that's what that 24 hours gives you. So that if you come back and say, I still want my abortion, the doctor doesn't say no.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Regis, you had testified you were in favor of one bill but not the other, which I totally understand. The idea that the polity in general would be making a decision that is so intimate to an individual, and I have to agree with you actually on that. But the point, I wonder what you think of this. Prior to 2022, we had a backstop, and that was Roe v. Wade, and that was Casey versus Pennsylvania. So no matter how off the rails the legislature goes or went, no matter how again, odious, the law that was passed, we could always look to the courts. We could always look to the federal court, for example, and say this does not meet the requirements of the United States Constitution, and there we could seek relief. But now that that possibility is completely gone, Dobbs took it away. Until Dobbs, I'm confident that maybe in another decade Dobbs will be overturned. But it's gone now, and there is no protection. What do you think of this? The idea behind sending it to the public to decide is senators are political creatures. And if we see that probably 70% of the people on Guam will support reproductive rights, we will be reluctant to take those away through legislation just right across the hallway. So this is an attempt to build an imperfect backstop to protect reproductive freedom and reproductive rights. I just wonder what you think about that. Thank you.
So my concern, mainly with the voting population taking this into their own hands, is that it is such a vast variety of people with varying beliefs, and I do not expect individuals with work, families, and their varying circumstances to do the proper amount of research to make a well-informed decision, to think about, for all people to think about the community as a whole rather than their own self-interest. That's my concern, and that is why I believe it might be more appropriate to just, maybe change this bill. I might feel more confident knowing that the senators do their own research and they talk about this, make a well-informed decision, and as public servants put aside any personal, cultural, or religious values that may affect this decision that the voting population won't understand is important to do, or they just might choose not to do.
Okay, I understand that, and I agree with that. Thank you very much for that response. I understand that. It gives you a stomachache. My gosh, what if they go the other way, right? So I get that, but I have faith. Over years of practicing law, I think the community as a whole generally comes to the right decision. But your fears and trepidation are well placed. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Canato, any questions or comments for the panel?
Hafide, thank you, Madam Chair, again. No real questions or concerns. I just wanted to thank again the panel for coming out. We respect your remarks heard today, and that is a part of our duty, is to hear you and respect your views, and we'll make our just decisions from there on the floor across the hall. So with that being said, I just wanted to thank you guys again for your testimony, and we will continue to hear your voices, and we'll move forward from there. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Taitakui.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, Madam Chair. Thank you, everyone, for coming out and testifying. Now, this is the part where the legislature listens to what the people have to say. I have to bring this up because it's been bugging me that the Women's Bureau here is, representing just people who it's okay to murder babies, or those that are pro-life. I mean, as a director of the Women's Bureau, I'm not sure why you're here testifying at all on any of these bills that you should have a neutral position as the Women's Bureau, because you represent all the women on Guam. So I'm just really disappointed, Jane Flores, that you're doing that. Now, I wouldn't say anything if you came here on your own personal time to come and testify in favor of murdering babies. I don't, I'm not going to say anything. In fact, you have your right to do so. But you're a director paid with tax-paying money for something so controversial as this.
you are not representing all the women on this island, that's for sure. The other thing, you know, I just, other than that, you know, of course, Ms. O'Malley, you really dissected these two bills, and it's very, very concerning, and I'm hoping that the senators are well informed on what would happen, the rights of individuals for their freedom of speech, to allow anybody to come in here, whether they're, you know, pro-life or whether they're into murdering babies, it's their right to do so. So to put something in law to muzzle those individuals, whether, you know, for or against, is not right. So there is definitely a lot of flaws in this legislation, both 111 and 106, that we have to address. And we have to also address the most important thing is the safety and welfare of the mother. You know, your name is Tatiana, is that right? Or what is your first name?
My name is Tatiana.
Tatiana,
Yes.
okay. So you mentioned earlier that you think that the people of Guam just don't know very much about...
That's not what I said.
Right?
No,
I'm sorry?
I didn't say the people of Guam don't know very much. I said that...
Well-informed or well-educated?
I said that because abortion and reproductive rights is such a nuanced issue, there are tons of different studies and facts about it. I do not believe that every individual voter will have the means or the time to be well-roundedly informed about the issue.
So you don't think that anybody who comes up to, well, I have to disagree. I have more faith in the people of Guam, you know, when they're going to make a vote, you know, especially on something like this. I think that you can't teach individuals morals. You can't teach them that. They learn that when they grow up. And that's basically what this is, you know, about morals, about whether you believe in it's okay, and this bill makes it like it's really okay to kill a baby. It's okay, you know, versus someone who wants to protect a life. You know, it just, I think people on Guam have been dealing with this for a long time. And for anybody to come in here and say that the Heartbeat Act didn't have that many people in favor of it, that was overwhelmingly, that's an outright lie. There were more people that signed up for pro-life than they did, or signed up for the Heartbeat Act than what was said earlier. That's not true. I've got information that says otherwise. So I didn't appreciate that misinformation that was brought up earlier. But again, I appreciate everyone who came to testify. And if you want to just press the button.
Am I still able to respond? I'm
sorry, to respond to what?
To your comments.
No, you don't. It's my turn to talk. I heard you spoke.
Madam Chair, would you allow her to
excuse me, Mr. Fisher.
Senators,
I am speaking.
Senators,
And don't interrupt me again.
Senators, that's correct.
No, I
Senator
did not
Tello,
ask
have
you a
the floor.
question. You said your point, and I'm saying my points.
But other people on...
Thank you, Senators.
So I really appreciate your time
Senator.
and your comments that you said, and I'm taking them to heart. I'm listening to what you have to say. There's
Thank
no
you,
doubt
Senator.
about it.
Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Madam Chair, point of order.
Senator Perez is recognized, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I do appreciate everybody that's come here today. And I know this is a very polarizing issue. And you know, in our community, you know, I see there's a divide in our community. And I think what we need to bring back, I think, is where do we have consensus? I think that's what's really key, is where can we come together? Because I think that, you know, why do we have to have laws that mandate certain things, right? And I think ultimately, you know, our community has problems. You know, obviously we have drug problems, right? Huge problems where it's breaking up families. and we're put in this cycle of violence, right? So if we can take a broader framework about what type of violence exists in our community, I think we need to go to the roots of those problems and address those. Because what's happening now, I think we're hyper-focused on a particular issue, and it's a very nuanced issue, I believe. I think I've been a proponent of education in our schools to teach respect. And what is, again, we talk about values, right? What are the values of our community? I think all of us can agree that we oppose violence in whatever form it exists, right? So I think what needs to happen, oftentimes we perpetuate violence in different ways. And this is a community that has suffered intergenerational violence, and it manifests in different ways. And I think, to start the healing in our community, we need to go deep into those roots. And, this is a manifestation of violence. But I think the root of the violence is elsewhere that needs to be addressed and healed. I think the sooner that we can educate our youth, educate our families, and provide support to our families. I think Guam has been in a situation where families have been broken up for many different reasons. We could talk about the contextual situation of colonization and militarization. We can talk about drugs, which are part of that context. So I see this as I see this holistically, really, that we need to address those roots. I mean, we can look at these bills. Yes, there are issues that were raised. Definitely there were issues that were raised with either the wording or the approach, right? We have one that's a referendum that would enact a bill, right, would enact law, which would probably be the first time, if I'm not mistaken, if I can ask Director Pangilinan, if you can come to the panel, please. Thank you for being here. And to your understanding, the referendum on Bill 106 proposes, is this something that is typical of referendums in the past in Guam?
The most recent was the marijuana, and then the other ones were the bingo, and before that, the gambling.
Sorry, if you could just state your name for record.
Oh, sorry. Maria Pangilinan, Guam Election Commission Executive Director. So I'll repeat it again. The most recent was the marijuana, the conception. That was, again, a legislative submission. Before that was the bingo, and that was an initiative. And before that, there were a few gambling initiatives as well.
And did any of those enact laws? Or were they just yes or no, we support or against?
The law on initiatives, referendum, and legislative submission says that the question that needs to be put is needs to be answered as a yes or no, but it will be preceded by a summary of no more than 100 words.
Okay, so what you're saying, if I'm hearing correctly, there wasn't a law that was enacted because of a referendum. It was just a sort of like a poll of the community.
No, the marijuana legislative submission turned into a law.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I guess it's thank you for that. I do appreciate that.
All right, I'm sorry. If I could, I forgot earlier, my fault, to read it. There is a fiscal note, and it talks about the cost for the election. It says, per information received from the Guam Election Commission, the last legislative proposal presented to Guam voters was the 2014 McKin-Casey Conception to Compassionate Cannabis Use Act, cost approximately $42,000 with a voting population of 45,021. Such costs included printing of referendum packets, data verification, postage, and compliance with referendum publication mandates. Per the GEC, the voting population in the 2022 general election was above 60,000. Using this voter level and increasing the aforementioned cost by 5%, the Bureau projects the cost impact of the subject legislation to be approximately $63,000. Lastly, it should be noted that the subject bill does not provide an appropriation or fund sources to cover related costs. An appropriation will be needed in advance of the next general election, which is scheduled for November 2024. That was the fiscal note for 106. For 111, the fiscal note reads that the Office of the Attorney General of Guam has reviewed Bill 111 and does not ascertain any immediate fiscal impact. Although the OAG had stated that there would be no immediate impact, the Bureau does anticipate that should Bill 111 be enacted, there could be operational costs incurred by the OAG and/or the Superior Court of Guam in terms of enforcement of the act should a civil action be commenced and continue through the legal system and/or judicial process. However, the Bureau is unable to provide an approximate fiscal impact at this time. Sorry to interrupt you, Senator Perez, you still have the floor.
Okay, thank you. So this question is for Ms. Flores, Jane Flores. So it's been mentioned by people on this panel that, there's basically abortion is allowed here on Guam. Do you see that as truthful or accurate?
Abortion is currently legal on Guam, yes.
Okay.
I would also like to state, just for the record, that I was invited to testify here as by the committee chair as director of the Bureau of Women's Affairs, and that as a member of the Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration, I advocate the Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration's position that abortion is a personal, private health care decision, and that is why I'm here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Flores, but you could have declined.
Senator Perez, you have the floor.
Okay. I know there was talk also about medical necessity, and obviously there is a doctor on this panel. So for Dr. Weir, so we did have testimony that there are alternatives in case to save a mother's life. Are there other situations where there aren't other alternatives in order to save a mother's life?
The decision to have an abortion is an intense decision for the mother and for the physician who recommends that in almost all cases. These patients are difficult for me, and I think most physicians. I would equate it to discussions where you discovered a patient has cancer and you have to sit down and talk to them about what their options are. They're extremely difficult and time-consuming. And the decisions are not easy. These are decisions the patients have to make, not the doctor. But in terms of life of the mother, oftentimes these decisions are when they need to be made, are pretty clear cut. Mothers who are diabetic and have heart problems don't do well when they're pregnant. And mothers who have problems with preeclampsia, which is a condition where blood clotting and high blood pressure combine to make life threatening for the mother. These are terrible decisions to make. And it must be kept in mind that if the mother decides not to abort, the risk of having a baby who doesn't have a mother to raise it is a distinct possibility. So to say unilaterally yay or nay, every decision is individual, and they require a lot of difficult soul searching on all the people that are involved. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I appreciate that response. Yeah, like I said, this is a very tough issue for our community, and I want to thank everybody who's come here today. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. I also want to thank all of you for your testimony, and I know it's difficult sometimes, as you live this as well as us, that we are going to have a contentious issue. But I very much appreciate you coming and making your voices heard and subjecting yourself to questioning by the senators and criticism sometimes. I appreciate that. So I also appreciate, in your testimony, how you have reviewed the bill, given us some suggestions, and looked at the language very clearly, and that, and we will, of course, try to do the same in our committee. Look at the language of the bill, ensure that we can take care of the health and other support of women, especially mothers, and children who are born under all circumstances. Ensure accountability for rape and abuse, and ensure that we have definitions that are going to be interpreted consistently across the board, is what I'm hoping for as well. Yeah, it's my turn to question. You're interrupting. Sorry? You're in. Senator Fisher is asking me whether I'm going to give him an opportunity to close on the bill, and I am, but this is right now. Sponsors always have the opportunity to close on the bill, but right now it's my turn as one of the senators who sat through this hearing to question the panel, to state my opinions on the bills as well. I noticed in our packets that we have a lot of written testimony that was submitted as well, including from the Guam Medical Society. Samir Ambrali, MD, MPH, President of the Guam Medical Society. He was testifying in support of Bill 111 and Bill 78. He said the Guam Medical Society represents a diverse membership of physicians, surgeons, nurse practitioners, and allied health practitioners who strive to provide the highest quality of health care in Guam. Every day, we discuss disease management, counsel patients about their conditions, advise options, and recommendations about their treatment. This shared decision-making is the foundation of a patient-physician relation. It is important now than ever that we protect the basic tenet of autonomy. Given the recent shift in legal political movement about a woman's right to reproductive health services, including contraception, emergency contraception, and abortion. The Guam Medical Society maintains that a woman has the right to make decisions about her reproductive choices after understanding her options and the risks, benefits associated with those options. The Guam Medical Society will always advocate against interference in shared medical decision-making. The Guam Medical Society supports Bill 111 and Bill 78 that expand options of reproductive health for women to include safe abortion and emergency contraception. We urge you to use your position of trust to champion these important causes, standing up for women's rights and ensuring that policies reflect the lived experiences and needs of women. Together, we can work towards a future where every woman can exercise her autonomy, access the care she needs, and make decisions that align with her values and circumstances. There was also a testimony from public health, which I want to read it into the record because, so there's no questions on that one either. Very short. Do you have that? Do you have it?
It's from Public Health?
Yeah. No, not that one. I read that one already. Well, I'm sorry. Yep. Public health?
I don't think that's behavioral health, that's not it, is it?
I just read it. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, my fault. It's an email, I'm going to paraphrase now, where they pretty much said that they are, well, I can't paraphrase that. Anyways, that will be included in the committee report. Not sure why I have misplaced that right now, but my apologies. All right, but I guess I just, my questions are, I want to thank you, Tatiana, for being very specific about the bills and Maneka for, very clearly talking about referendum versus not a referendum, because that's kind of the choice that we're going to be looking at as well, in addition to whether we support the underlying definitions of viability, definitions of physicians' decision-making. So Dr. Weir, thank you for coming in. Can I ask you a couple questions? So did you, do you think this should be an issue for a referendum or to be decided by senators alone?
I think that I would support the position of the Guam Medical Society. I think that pretty much states the position of physicians. I think this is a decision that needs to be made between the doctor and the patient. And I really have great qualms when people who don't have the kind of background that physicians have get into this discussion. And there's a lot of nuances to this decision, and there is no good decision. I can't overemphasize that. None of the alternatives are ideal.
Can I ask you also then, there's a part in the bill that talks about, or both bills that talks about well, it defines viability. It says the term viability means the point in pregnancy at which, in the good faith medical judgment of the treating healthcare provider. This is what I would ask, maybe further from the Medical Society, but you, if you're willing, the good faith medical judgment of the treating healthcare provider based on the particular facts of the case before the healthcare provider. There is a reasonable likelihood of sustained fetal survival outside the uterus with or without artificial support. Do you believe that with this definition, we would get consistent recommendations from medical providers?
I don't, as an individual, I don't think that definition answers the questions that are involved here. There's a lot more to viability than being able to breathe and having a heartbeat. Viability and having the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of their interest, as was discussed, involves the ability for the child to be able to function fully. And there are many instances where in order to do that, it may be totally impossible. And in other instances, in order to do that, considerable time, effort, and money need to be expended in order to even have a minimal existence. So these are decisions that I don't think that anyone outside of the individual who is involved really has any business talking about. We can present the alternatives, but in the end, this comes down to where the mother is and what the mother feels. And it's important that she be given information, but to say what's right for one person isn't necessarily right for another person who's in the same situation. And I don't think that's what laws are about.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Weir. And thanks again to everyone. So I did find the email from Department of Public Health Social Services. This is from L'Oreal Villagomez, who is the Division of General Administration Director's Office. She says, Hafa Speaker Terlaje, please be informed the Department of Public Health and Social Services will not be present at today's public hearing. Our family planning grant restricts activity that in any way tends to promote public support or opposition to any legislative proposal, but the department supports maternal child health and expanding services for mothers and children. We can assure you our department is doing its due diligence to include staying in compliance with our grants for our programs provided to our island community. It doesn't identify which bill this is in response to, but it was in response to my invitation to provide testimony on all three bills, 78, 106, and 111. All right, thank you. So that concludes my questions. But, Marie Pangolin, can you confirm that you concur with the fiscal impact note from BBMR?
Speaker, that was done in April. We know that the postage has gone up a bit. So it's at 63,000. Maybe that won't cover it. It could be as high as 100,000. We have 60,000. We anticipate having 60,000 registered voters at the time. The current law requires us to send the education pamphlet to each one of them. Besides that, we're required to also publish that there will be a measure on the ballot.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so with that, I'm going to now allow, thank you. Oh, Dr. Weir, yes.
Unfortunately, that cost only talks about the cost of the election. It doesn't refer to the cost of what happens if we pass this law, and if we don't pass this law, I think you need to get input from the Department of Education as to what it's going to cost to support these children in the schools. I think you need to maybe talk to the prison department, DOC. I went to a conference several years ago when Camacho was governor, and they had a speaker in who told me something that has stuck with me, and that is that in Florida, they look at 4th grade reading abilities, and they use those numbers to determine how many prison cells they need to be building. That to me was devastating. So I think there's much more than just the cost of the election that needs to be looked at when we talk about the cost of this legislation.
Thank you very much. I'm going to allow Senator Fisher to close on Bill 106 and then followed by Senator Kanata to close on Bill 111. Senator Fisher.
Thank you very much, Chair. The first thing is, I guess it's a matter of housekeeping. As part of the record, we received a photograph of a person. I would ask that that be stricken from the record. There's no relevance at all to it, and it seems to be entirely extraneous. Ma'am? It's this one. Okay,
We'll consider that request. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I just very briefly, our constitutional rights are always under attack. They never are not. Again, as I began a couple hours ago, the right to privacy we thought had been fairly well cemented into American jurisprudence, just to find out on June 22nd of 2022 that we were entirely wrong, and the 14th Amendment privacy right is under attack. That came as a bolt of lightning out of the blue. So we should be always vigilant. Always vigilant. This is a never-ending. It's a never-ending duty of a citizen to be alert. And then just finally, Raphael Warnock, senator from Georgia, he was speaking about the issue of abortion and the rights to privacy. And he said that in the physician's office, there is room for the doctor, and there is room for the patient, and there's no room at all for the state. No room at all for the territory. It's just the doctor and just the person. State's got no business there. Thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Kanata?
Again, I don't have much to say. Ms. Tanya, I recognize you and I yield my time to you if you have anything else to say. As a youth, as the youngest freshman senator in this body, I'm very happy to see you as a young, I'm almost certain you're the same age bracket as me, so I'm very happy to see your participation in this evening's hearing.
I would just like to slightly revise my statement. I think that instead of the senators voting, if that is at all possible to avoid, my belief is that reproductive rights should just be a guarantee. It's something that is entitled to all people, and when it comes to abortion, the right to do so involves the right to accept any consequences that come with the choice to do or not to do it. So thank you for the opportunity to end on that.
Of course, thank you for your time again. It's very rare we see any youth participating in any of our legislative processes unless they're forced to be here by their educational institution. So with that being said, Madam Speaker, I have nothing further. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Madam
And
Speaker,
I'd like to acknowledge.
Madam Speaker, if I may, that we have decorum, that the staff of the senators don't act up in the audience. This is very uncalled for to have staff do so.
Thank you, Senator. I'd like to invite anyone who was not able to present testimony today to submit testimony to my office in the next 10 working days. or 10 calendar days. You can submit that to Senator Terlaje Guam at gmail.com or hand deliver it here to the Guam Congress Building, addressed to me. And I'd like to thank all of those who put their testimony in writing. And if you haven't yet and you would like to, please do that. It allows us to be very accurate in our transcription of this hearing. And I'd like to thank those who submitted written testimony already on Bill 78, including the Guam Medical Society, Maria Mofnis in opposition, Director Therese Areola, Guam Behavioral Health in support, Director Jane Flores, BWA in support, Patricia Babauta in opposition, Mary Pablo in opposition, Muña Flores in support, Department of Public Health and Social Services, Marilu Martinez in opposition. On Bill number 106, there was testimony submitted in writing by Angela Barber in opposition, Ana Maria Indalecio Delgado in opposition, Richard Narcia Jr. in opposition, Carmelita Payet in opposition, James Turbio in opposition, Godofredo Pamintuan Jr. in opposition, Agnes M. White in opposition, Director Jane Flores, BWA in support, Sharon E. O'Malley in opposition, Daniel Barber in opposition, Annolyn Joseph in opposition, Eddie Baza Calvo, former governor, in opposition, Mary P. Pablo in opposition, Donna Kerlani in opposition, Tatiana Regis in support, Monica Flores in support, Dr. William Weir, Viola Ekfaji in opposition, Department of Public Health and Social Services, Marilu Martinez in opposition. On Bill number 111, Patricia Babauta in opposition, Richard Narcia Jr. in opposition, Carmelita Payet in opposition, Jim Marvin James Turbio in opposition, Agnes M. White in opposition, Jonah Concepcion in opposition, Dr. Samir Brawley, Guam Medical Society in support, Mary P. Pablo in opposition, Monica Flores in support, Donna Kelani in opposition, Tatiana Regis in support, Dr. William Weir, Viola Faji in opposition, Sharon O'Malley in opposition, Department of Public Health Social Services, and Marilu Martinez in opposition. So thank you again to all of you. And again, this public hearing is now adjourned and the time is 5:30 p.m. Si Diyos masi.